Next, we have Acting Lieutenant Michael Wren. Oh, sorry. I forgot one thing, Mark. You need to actually be officially sworn in by Susan. Susan. After you. Okay.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut so long as you are a resident thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge according to law your duties as captain of the Wethersfield Police Department to the best of your abilities, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, we have Acting Lieutenant Michael Wren. Acting Lieutenant Michael Wren is promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Lieutenant Wren is a 20-year law enforcement veteran, starting his career with the Wethersfield Police Department in 2002. Previous posts with the Wethersfield Police Department include Master Police Officer, Acting Police Sergeant, Patrol Sergeant, Acting Lieutenant of Patrol, and Acting Lieutenant of Support Services. Lieutenant Wren holds a master's degree in criminal justice from the American Military University and a bachelor's of arts degree in sociology from the University of Connecticut. Lieutenant Wren is being assigned as the Commander of Support Services, and his call sign is 430. This evening, Lieutenant Wren is being pinned by his wife, Melissa, with the assistance of his daughter, Elle, son Michael, and mother, Giselle. Please come up. For our sergeants, first we're going to start with Officer Michael Forrest. Officer Michael Forrest is promoted to the rank of Sergeant. Sergeant Forrest is a 9-year law enforcement veteran, starting his career with the Willimantic Police Department in 2013 as a patrol officer. Being a lifelong resident of the town of Wethersfield, Sergeant Forrest resigned from the Willimantic Police Department in 2014 to join the Wethersfield Police Department. Posts with the Wethersfield Police Department include Patrol, Field Training Officer, Master Police Officer, and Acting Sergeant in the Patrol Division. Sergeant Forrest holds an associate's degree in criminal justice from Manchester Community College. Sergeant Forrest is being assigned to the Patrol Division as a patrol supervisor. This evening, he'll be pinned by his wife, Ashley. Come on. Officer Jacob Ocharski. Officer Ocharski is promoted to the rank of Sergeant. Sergeant Ocharski is a 9-year law enforcement veteran, starting his career with the Clinton Police Department in 2013 as a patrol officer. Sergeant Ocharski resigned from the Clinton Police Department in 2016 to join the Wethersfield Police Department. Posts with the Wethersfield Police Department include Patrol Evidence Technician, Mid-State Accident Reconstructionist, and Property Control Officer. Sergeant Ocharski holds a Bachelor of Science in Criminology from Central Connecticut State University. Sergeant Ocharski will be assigned to patrol as a patrol supervisor, and he's being pinned this evening by his wife, Kristen. Last but not least, Officer Kevin Foster. Officer Foster is promoted to the rank of sergeant. Sergeant Foster is a 12-year law enforcement veteran, starting his career with the Wethersfield Police Department in 2010. Posts with the Wethersfield Police Department include patrol officer, and his recent last assignment was detective in the detective division. Sergeant Foster holds a master's degree in applied sociology from Clemson University and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. Sergeant Foster is going to be assigned to patrol as a patrol supervisor. He's being pinned this evening by his wife, Dorothy, with the assistance of his son, Noah, good baseball player, daughters, Carolina and Gabriella, and son, Elijah. So with these appointment and promotion, the Wethersfield Police Department is moving forward to achieve the vision of becoming that premier law enforcement agency in Hartford County, the agency that I said before that's going to be sought out by other officers for employment and by other police departments to emulate. So with that, this concludes the ceremony. Please join me in the applause of all the members of the Wethersfield Police Department present. And for those
Chief, do you want to get all gentlemen to come up with you and everybody
Sure.
have a photo?
That'd be great.
Together? Yeah. We're fine back here.
It's okay to smile, guys.
I knew Councilman
Congratulations again.
Okay, for the second part, the presentation. In the spirit of time, I'll try to keep this brief since I took up 15 minutes with that ceremony, but I know you have other pressing matters this evening. So, as this is going to be a monthly thing now that we're starting to move this agency forward, doing our monthly stats and assessment. Let all the families get out first.
You know how to clear a room. Is this what it's like at roll call, everybody?
Especially when the chief walks in the room. Everybody can move up.
Right when you took off your hat, that was it.
That's it. That's it. The captain better not leave.
Your call. You
Okay.
can start it up.
All right.
I think we're
So,
all, everybody can see it up here.
Yep.
Everybody back there can see it?
So as we start to move the agency forward, like we said earlier on, we're going to start with the monthly updates for the initiatives and stats in the town to see where we are last year compared to this year, next year, so forth, and going forward. So we'll start with our accidents from the month of August to July. So there were a total of 56 motor vehicle accidents in the month of August. That was an increase from 46 that we experienced in the month of July. The majority of them occurred on the Berlin Turnpike and the Silas Deane Highway between the hours of 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., occurring mostly on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And as I told you before, this is now starting to get our officers and our commanders familiar with the next-gen system which we have in place, which does mapping, hot spots, and that nature. So now we're teaching them how to do this so that way you can recognize patterns, which you're going to see going forward. So with that, we start deploying our resources accordingly. In the month of August, we had 259 motor vehicle stops were conducted. That was an increase from 234 in July. And we're going to continue to start moving that number up. 29 infractions were issued, 16 summonses, 8 written warnings, 206 verbal warnings. Now, based on the feedback that we get from the community, the calls to the PD for complaints on stop signs, red lights, speeders, noise complaints, those are what's called selective enforcement patrol. So whenever you have an issue in the community, you call the police department, and we take our resources. Actually, Lieutenant Gus Rodriguez, who's here, he'll take that. We'll incorporate that with our next-gen system and try to map it out to deploy our services to meet your needs when you call. So I know that you call councilmen sometimes about these issues, but you could call us, and we'll do exactly this. So we did 88 selective enforcement patrols for hazard operation, which is increased from 57 in July. So that's taking your information, your feedback, incorporating what we do in the PD and deploying our resources accordingly. We arrested one individual for drunk driving. That's down from 3 in the month of July. But here's another initiative, parking enforcement. Overnight parking, illegal parking. We took that very seriously. We get complaints about that. You see the numbers from July to August. It goes from 9 to 161. Now, there's a reason for that big jump. We're just not going to go and ticket someone right away in a violation. We leave a warning on the car. We give them the opportunity to go ahead and take corrective action. If they don't take that corrective action, we come back the next month and then we issue the infraction. So that way, they're well aware of it. That, again, is based on feedback from the community in your neighborhoods, letting us know where you're seeing, identifying the issues. As I stated earlier when I did my last presentation in July, when I did the reorganization of the department, I wanted to incorporate a traffic unit. We've started that. This is the first month. September is the first month. It's one officer right now. He works a swing shift based on the data we get from NextGen, identifying our hotspots, the dates and times of when we have issues, based on your complaints for stop signs, red lights, speeding, noise complaints, and then we take him and we assign him to those areas. With that being said, he started September 5th. He's had 7 days on the road so far, and it's the 19th, and he's already made 78 traffic stops. That's outside of the normal patrol operations functions. So we're still maintaining our patrol operations, we're officers on the road, but now we have an additional resource out there that can tackle this initiative and help with the hazardous motor vehicle violations in town. And here's just a breakdown of what he's done so far. Distracted driving, cell phone 20, cell phone, which resulted in another identified violation, suspension, no insurance, 2, afraid to drive right, no lights illuminated, somebody driving at night with no lights on, red light violations, running the red light, speeding, stop sign violations. So he's got a total of 78 thus so far this month so far. It's only 7 days. Again, based on the feedback from the community and deploying him in those areas where you target them. Calls for service. As a police department, we've increased from July to 2,840 in the month of August. 911 calls, emergency calls decreased. and we made 42 in custody arrests. That's down from July. Again, here's the noise complaints that we received from the members of the community, people driving by with noise, loud mufflers, or things of that nature. That's going down because, as you call in, we deployed the resources to those areas to try to tackle that, combat it during those times. So it's all based data-driven, hotspots, putting cops on the dots, as we call it, to get them in those areas that you're looking for. One of the big things we saw this past month in August were burglaries. We responded to 20 burglary complaints. 15 of them occurred at Folly Brook Apartments and Goodwin Park Road. Most of the burglaries occurred from 01 to 1800 hours. Occurred on Friday. Now, you say forced entry was utilized. You have to understand that area we're talking about. It's an apartment complex. There were thefts from storage units underneath the apartment complex, which is open, accessible to the public, and it's the chicken wire type of storage areas. So when you say forced entry, everyone sees the word forced entry. It's cutting in a lock, grabbing that, and going. It wasn't someone kicking in the door or something of that nature. And that's why it was saying gain from the basement, because the storage area is in the basement of the area. So with that, we identified the pattern I just told you. Lieutenant Rodriguez deployed 2 uniformed officers in the undercover car during that time frame, at which point we observed the individual walking from there with items, able to latch onto them, make an arrest, get a DNA sample, and hopefully tie them back to the other 15. But since we've arrested them, those have stopped.
Cool.
And the last thing I'm touching on real quick here is that now we're looking at the internal processes of the department. We're trying to streamline our department to go away from paper to go more automated. So we're looking at different ideas, ways of doing that. We started with the use of forces, making sure we're scanning those and putting those in the computers and filing them away so we're not have to deal with paperwork there. We're doing an operational assessment of our internal affairs unit, and we just got our first draft from Kalia, so that's going to be the new thing coming out in the next month or two that you'll see coming from the PD. So that's a quick overall of the PD for the last month and up until this date. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Councilman Forrest?
Thanks. Chief, is there, we saw a lot of numbers related to increases, but is there an enforcement, is there a breakdown as to what ordinances or statutes were violated? So we might say, let's say in the parking, for example, you might say, hey, of the 100 and whatever there were, 45 were for overnight parking and 13 were for, I don't know, late, no parking area, whatever it is. Is there a breakdown related to that?
We could definitely get that for you. This is just a high-level overview of that.
Yeah,
but if you
sure.
want to get down and more in the weeds, we could definitely get that for you.
I'd be interested in the breakdown if that's, computer-driven and just plugged into a computer anyways. Second question is, you talked about hotspot maps for different things, whether it's complaints, noise complaints, and you indicated some time of day, et cetera. Do we have access to the ability, or can we see those sort of hotspot maps where different things are happening around town and locations?
I can incorporate those into the PowerPoint.
I don't know if you're going to put a PowerPoint. I was just interested.
No, I actually had the one for the, I had it on here for the, for our traffic unit officer, showing all his stops on a Silas, Deane, hang dog, 2-rod. So that was on, I just took it out for the spirit of time for this evening. But
Sure, of course.
I'll leave it up next time for the visual.
Because you mentioned like some of the, whether there's noise complaints and that you, for different purposes, you probably determine different hotspots or areas. It'll be interesting to see those maps, see what parts of the town are affected by which type of complaints or issues going on.
Yeah, we definitely can do that.
That's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Lesser?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thank you for that report and appreciate that you're going to come here each month with an update. It's very helpful to us. I have one question on one particular area, and that is traffic calming / speeding. So the thing I hear the most from residents is concerns about speeding, and particularly some of our longer major roads, Walcott Hill, Ridge Road. And I know you put some statistics up there, but can you give us a little more information about what you and your team are doing in terms of traffic calming around town, in terms of speeding, and some of the plans you have and some of the things you're doing for that? Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for the question. So what we do is we take, obviously now the traffic unit officer, he's going to be deployed to those hotspots. Also, he's also in charge of the speed trailer to bring those out, to put those up, the speed signs that go on the pole to identify, to show individuals who are speeding on those roadways. And we also let the officers know when you're not doing other calls for service, go to those spots and conduct traffic enforcement. It's not just up to the traffic officer to do that. So it's a team effort. That's just an added benefit of having one other person out there. So they take and they give that to the officers, and they go and deploy them into those areas with the additional resources.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else with any questions? Councilman O'Connor?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this report. In all my years of doing this, I've never had someone come up and show us that, so that was really helpful. I
You're welcome,
appreciate
sir.
it.
Great counsel.
I concur. Thank you so much. And just going back to the team that you've sworn in tonight, great job with that as well. Fine group of officers who are dedicated to the town and obviously to the work that you have in mind to bring this department to the level that you want to see it and that we all want to see it. One thing you mentioned first when you started talking about is, some of the complaints and comments that we get as councilmen or maybe even town manager receives. You and I had a conversation about a month ago on a lot of these things that are going on in town, if it's crime or if it's speeding or, the stop sign, not stopping at a stop sign. It was good to see that 32 of those infractions were of the stop sign, because that is a problem. But more importantly, a lot of times folks read things on social media, they get on social media, they post it, they may tag the Wethersfield Police Department, they may tag anybody up here or the town manager. But I guess talking to you at that point, you said, listen, if they just pick up the phone call, routine call, might not have to be 911, but the regular number, dispatch number at the police department, that's probably the most effective way to get our officers engaged and tell them, don't post something on Facebook that said, I saw people all day yesterday blowing through the red light or stop sign at Ridge and Wells. Called in, you could send that traffic officer or, a patrolman up there and take care of it. So I guess it's more of a comment or a PSA to let folks know. Yeah, they do answer the phone. I called the other day about something, and officers were quick to answer and addressed it. So I guess the PSA would be, before you put it out on social media, the officers are there.
Just give us a call.
They can be up there at any time. Now, again, I have to echo the comments of the other councilman. Great job with what you're doing. Thank you for the monthly reports. Hopefully, we won't see upticks, but you guys are doing a great job. Thanks for being out there.
Let me qualify that. You might see an uptick. That's because we're doing and we're more visible.
Yep.
So that's what you might want to see in some areas.
We appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the agenda at hand, we do have public comment under two sections, similar to the meeting 2 weeks ago. There are two hearings. If folks are here to speak on the smoke-free town facilities ordinance for the Parks and Rec or the installation of a sports complex here in town, your opportunity to speak would be now. I think what I'll do is take it in order. The smoke-free town facilities ordinance. If somebody wants to speak on that, please, I think you have 10 minutes to be able to speak. State your name and address clearly. Sue, I think we have the sign-up sheet up there.
Yes, the sign-up sheet is there, but it may save time if you come up and you speak, and then as the next person comes up behind you, I wanted to have a small table set up. You can sign up if you've just spoken, and that way it'll keep things moving.
Okay.
However you can get it done, sometimes it seems to hold it up, so we were thinking maybe to sign after you leave when the next person's speaking.
Okay. Anybody here to speak on the Parks and Rec smoke-free town facilities ordinance? Jeff Pitchell. He's going to sing us something.
Is Texas flood coming?
Seeing none, I hereby close the public hearing on 1A, smoke-free town facilities ordinance. And now it's the opportunity on the installation of a sports complex here in town. If you are going to speak on that, just raise your hand. I will call on you, and you have 10 minutes. State your name, address, and write it down when you're done speaking. Your hand was first, Mr. Lasella.
Paul Lasella, 32 Hartford Avenue. Good evening, councilors and neighbors. I'm here to speak on behalf of Keisha Farm, not necessarily specific to the sports fields. I want to first start by stating that as a representative of Weathersfield Youth Field Hockey, Weathersfield Youth Lacrosse, and as a community member, I am not in favor of a large 24/7 commercial complex as some residents have imagined. Their imagination has been left to run wild because we do not have a targeted and well-defined plan for the sports fields or the farm. With that said, there are several recommendations provided by the Keisha Farm Committee that gives enough direction to move forward with aspects of those recommendations. As discussed many times, the community has expressed a need and interest in additional sports fields. I want to clarify some key points regarding this need. Several of the fields, and I use air quotes intentionally, are not fields at all. Charles Wright is a schoolyard that is not large enough to fit a regulation lacrosse field. The Cove, where we have 3 fields, is open green space within a park where we hold community events, including the carnival, high school graduation, the craft fair, fireworks, and many other things. While the town classifies these as fields in fair condition, with all due respect, they are not sports fields at all. They are places where there was enough room to paint a rectangle, and it is misleading to say that they are in fact athletic fields. These are not the only examples like this around town. As we consider the future of the farm, I ask that we view the future through the lens of progress and community, and as an opportunity to create a unique space that differentiates Weathersfield, a space that can educate, a space that can bring people together for learning, celebration, and athletics, a space where people can enjoy and be part of nature, a space that we can be proud of and used as a tool to bring our neighbors across Weathersfield together. With the right approach, we can do this in a way that limits the impact to the neighborhoods with an emphasis on safety by addressing parking and speeding concerns. But I fear this is a case of the NIMBYs. Progress is fine if it's not in my backyard. Sports fields are fine if they're not in my backyard. An educational facility, a barn, a concert venue, a greenhouse, a pick-your-own farm, all is fine as long as it's not in my backyard. And you are correct to say these recommendations are not in my personal backyard, but I will ask you this question. How many of you enjoy Old Weathersfield? First night, Porch Fest, Scarecrows on Main, Bikes on Main, Corn Fest, Carnival, Parade, Craft Fair, Fireworks, Shopping, Restaurants, Farmers Markets. These are literally all in my backyard. And for many of the councilmen, it's also in their backyard. Do all of these have an impact on traffic, congestion, people blocking my driveway, detours? Yes, it does. But I put my individual needs behind the needs of our town and our community, and often, as new events are considered, as new ventures take place, we support them because they contribute to our Weathersfield community. Their contribution to our Weathersfield community outweighs our own selfish interest. These things are a bright spot for Weathersfield. I'll go as far as to say as Old Weathersfield is our crown jewel. Imagine if the community did not support these events. What if with every event or venture we asked for a traffic study? What if we complained about the prospect of increased traffic? What if we let parking concerns limit our creativity? When I first moved to Old Weathersfield 18 years ago, I could push my daughter in a stroller down Main Street and maybe see 2 other people. Today I would pass 250 on any given Saturday morning. This is progress and not preservation. The support of our neighbors, our council, and town employees put Old Weathersfield on the map. Our property values have increased, and people come here and spend money in our small businesses. I ask that anyone opposed to progress at Keisha Farm to take a step back and ask yourself if you're putting your personal interests above the community. Ask what the balance is between preserving your neighborhood and contributing to a broader community purpose that has the potential to be Weathersfield's second crown jewel. I ask that you consider change, even if that change changes the way things have been. You have an opportunity, we have an opportunity to create a best-in-class town-wide facility that meets the needs of Weathersfield residents. and that balances the needs of the neighborhood around the farm. Do not let this opportunity pass us by. I believe that if we do this right, and we can do it right, you will find many benefits to having the asset in your neighborhood. Lastly, I'll speak about our specific ask, one that I hope gets written down and proposed by our council as to limit our imagination as to what a complex means. Let's be specific. The sports programs in town, and not just the ones that I represent, need 2 additional turf fields, fences that surround them, a building with bathrooms, preferably with the ability to have concessions, running water, and parking. That's it. We're asking for synthetic fields to reduce the weekly strain on physical services maintaining grass fields. I will also be back here supporting Jim and his walking trails, Cindy and her barn restoration efforts, and the countless other people who share my goal to make this a community facility that supports the many needs of Weathersfield, not just the residents that live around the farm. I'll leave you a quote from Mark Twain. The secret of making progress is to get started. And another quote from Margaret Wheatley. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. The Keisha Farm Committee has discovered what our community cares about, and it's up to our council to be thoughtful shepherds of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is John Scott.
In the microphone, Mr. Scott.
Okay. I'm John Scott. I live over in the village. That's what I'm calling it, you know. Live on Morgan Circle. You know, when I was growing up, I was friends with Dougie Morgan. They had horses. The Weltons had horses on Highland Street, and the Beechers had them over on Roebuck Lane. And, you know, there's one development over there that they call it Pequot Village. Pequot Indians, Native Americans were here a long time ago. And that just gives a feeling of what this neighborhood is like. I lived here, you know, from 55 to the mid-70s with my family, and then I moved back again in 2001, and I've been here ever since then. And I moved here because Two Stone Brook runs behind my house in Woods, but I used to be a tile setter, and it's centrally located. But like I said, I'm calling it the village. You know, it's like a little village, and I'm here for one reason. I don't know if I think I said I've never done this before, but I don't want to see a big commercial mega complex, you know, here. Like whatever else they want to do, it's okay if they, you know, have, what I would like is, you know, the mixed venue like a lot of people are talking about, you know, like petting zoo, gardens, sports, but this mega complex thing, I can picture people coming down out of state on 91, you know, who knows, you know, racing through there. When they have the Little League games there next to Highcrest School, the street gets filled up, and you know, both sides are filled with cars, and you have to drive down the middle. It's not safe. My wife won't drive there. I have 2 little children. They're going to be going to Highcrest School. You know, I have a good imagination, and I could picture, you know, this mega complex, who knows what it is, that's what I'm calling it, you know, right next, directly bordering Highcrest School, you know, and there's woods between Highcrest and the Keisha property. You know, I took notes. Just want to see anything that I didn't cover here. I am passionate about this. You know, this area, you know, it's like not commercially, what do you call it? It's not commercially zoned. It's like, first of all, you know, it's residential. Like I said, it's the village. And I'm pretty sure pretty much everybody that lives there, they're there because of that reason. It would have to be, yeah, Old Weathersfield's good too. What?
Just like Old Weathersfield.
Yes. So, the zoning would have to be changed. They, probably have to put in traffic lights. Cars would be racing in and out of there from 91 out of state. Let's see. And to my understanding, the farm was designated when we acquired it to be open space. And, let's see. I heard there's like, there's probably all kinds of things going around, and I don't know what's true, but I heard there was like people here connected with a sports complex with, commercial interests in mind. And, if they want to have a sports complex, it could be on like the Silas Deane Highway or somewhere that would accommodate it. I'm going to speak for everybody in my neighborhood. We do not want a sports complex. We're a little village. It does not belong there. And, probably, like I already said once, almost everybody there must agree with me. They could even put it on the Silas Deane or the Berlin Turnpike. It does not belong in a space like that. There's no commercial establishments within maybe, say, 2 miles of that area. There's the Little League right next door. Okay, I wrote down in my notes, there'd be spotlights up on the top, parking lots, traffic lights, I mentioned security officers, and, the crime could increase. The roads are narrow there. They can't be widened. There's the golf course there. There's, Two Stone Brook and other things. And it's they're 2-lane roads. Highland Street is about the busiest one of them all. It's 2 lanes. It's like a mega complex just is not going to work. And let's see. And some of the funds that we had from the COVID release, it wasn't designated for that. And there was supposed to be money for schools. And, like with this complex, what about gambling? I don't know if that's going to be part of it too, like legalized gambling. I have no idea. But it's something to consider. And I do not want this in my backyard. And I think, like I said twice already, anybody who lives there does not want it in the village. It's the village, I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Yes, ma'am.
Do we sign it? Good evening. Philomena Marinelli, 16 Stonegate Drive. I'd like to take this opportunity to read the email that I sent to the Town Council 2 weeks ago after the last Town Council meeting. I attended the September 6th Council meeting to obtain information and listen to public comment surrounding the proposed plans for Keisha Farm. I decided not to offer public comment at the time, but would like to share my thoughts and very strong concerns regarding the proposed use of the land in this email for your consideration. I reside at 16 Stonegate Drive, directly adjacent to Keisha Farm. I also own the property which was my mother's home at 101 Collier Road, that is across the street from the farm. I've been a resident of Weathersfield for more than 40 years. My 4 children attended the Weathersfield school system, and my last child is still at the high school. I've been a very active resident in town and within the school system since 1996. I moved to Weathersfield on Collier Road in 1983 with my family. At that time, I was able to open my front door and enjoy the scape of farmland across the street with grazing cows. Times have changed, but the one thing I do not want to see when I open that door now is a sports complex with heavy traffic in a beautiful residential area. I'm against a sports complex being built on the farm. We have been an active sports family for many years, and my children have and continue to participate in sports, soccer, etc. I understand young families wanting to support a complex, but it does not belong on Keisha Farm. My children have participated in many games in sports complexes across the state. They are always in areas that do not abut residential homes. They are in large land areas that are suited for such structures. Such a complex would create huge traffic problems and noise, to name just a few issues. Much more thought and studies need to be done to come up with a proper plan for this beautiful piece of land. During the town council meeting of September 6th, it was stated that many of the current facilities in town that are used for playing fields are declining and or not usable. So what will we do? Just abandon those areas? The town council needs to assess those areas and decide how to appropriate funds to fix what we already have in place. In addition, we have a beautiful facility at Mill Woods that can also be expanded and or fixed to help add more fields. This is where the emphasis should be. More importantly, in deciding what's best for Keisha Farm, it's important to remember that we are a great town, rich in history and character. Old Weathersfield and Main Street alone are filled with our history, and it tells an amazing story. I am proud to say that my children participated in many of the summer programs offered at the Deane Museum and the Keeney Memorial that taught them about the history of our town and colonial times. These were and continue to be wonderful educational opportunities for our youth. The town and Weathersfield Historical Society continue to do a wonderful job in preserving the richness of the history while maintaining its distinct character. In the same way, the plans for the Keisha Farm property need to have the same integrity as we have maintained for Old Weathersfield and our roots. The town council needs to be thoughtful in this planning process and remember to preserve the character of this town. The land needs to be developed in a way that is appealing to all tax-paying citizens, not just a small percentage interested in sports alone. Every tax-paying citizen should have the opportunity to enjoy this land. I propose that you take the time and effort to get much-needed input from our residents on what they would like to see on the property. I envision a beautiful land that has walking trails, flower gardens, reflection pool, a nature preserve, greenhouses, community farming plots to preserve the agricultural aspect of Keisha Farm, educational classes regarding nature, farming, the history of Keisha Farm, and of course a few playing fields if so desired by the community. Let's not rush this process. Let's do it right. Let's be thoughtful. Let's preserve what our community has built for so many years. Let's create something that we can all be proud of and that every single resident of Weathersfield can enjoy. This is a town with a special reputation that we can make even greater with thoughtful and lasting plans that will reflect the character of Weathersfield. Now let's go and do it right. Thank you for your time.
Mrs. Breton? Mrs. Breton?
Mary Breton, 209 Clovercrest Road. Good evening, Mayor Rell and Town Council. I support the amended version of the sports complex resolution to be voted on tonight. Recall the original resolution that was put forth 2 weeks ago reflected intentions to put Keisha Farm, to put a sports complex on Keisha Farm specifically. And while resolutions are non-binding, it did reflect the intention. But I support the amended version because of the more thoughtful, measured, and holistic approach, and I thank you all for that. It will direct the town manager to assess current fields and sites and not just focus on a single property to solve for the overall field shortage and poor field conditions in our town. And it will enable the town manager to review all possible areas in the town for indoor and outdoor sports complex. And I ask that you keep in mind that the recommendations of the Keisha Farm Committee that Paul alluded to, it made me happy to hear that we're on the same page, that's the starting point, and it'll leverage where we go from there. I think seeing in words, honestly, the resolution, the way it was written, the sportsplex, as well as Keisha Farm, raised a lot of fear for people. But this is the thoughtful approach, and this is the right approach. And I think just hearing some of the conversations, I think we can come together on this. But I also, keep in mind what we did find in the survey. 77% preferred multiple use. So when we're talking about defining a sports complex and we know there's a need for fields, do we make sure, well, we should make sure that they don't eclipse the other cool uses that we could use for this property. It's a gem. I asked that we also keep in mind that, I'm losing my train of thought here, that after COVID, a lot of us want to be outdoors. It's a great way for a lot of communities to come together. We had some concerts this summer. Everybody enjoyed them, and it's a great night out, but there's all kinds of other things we could do there. And there's a benefit to open space and just nature, and we all know that, and we all take advantage of that. And like I said, Keisha Farm is unique. It is rich in history and valued piece of property, and we can use that with all of these other uses as well. And it is one of the last undeveloped parcels and should be used to enhance the quality of life for all of us, young, old, and in between. And it is true, we do need better sports and safer sports fields for our youth. And I support that. I support solving this through the very process that's been proposed, the review of current field status and plans for repairing them, and the creation of new fields using the existing master plans already created at Mill Woods, looking at other locations, including Keisha. And I do support a sports complex, believe it or not, and the idea of a revenue generating one at that, but in a suitable area, and with the best opportunity to generate the most revenue with easy access to 91, that would encourage more business growth for nearby restaurants, and that would not cause hardship to the community. A neighbor of mine, Sean Fuss, he's probably not going to want me to mention his name, but he did some really good research. He researched the top mentioned sports complexes in Connecticut, and none are really located in residential areas. And they're all in industrial parks or areas that significantly distance from the nearby neighborhoods. And, just on the definition of sports complex, I think we're hearing more and more clarity around that now. And I think that that's very helpful, and so I really appreciate that. I'm hopeful that the amended resolution passes tonight to allow more opportunity for community engagement in the conversation for use of Keisha Farm, and to build the plans for the other preferred uses of Keisha property as already revealed in the survey. Creating a place that provides a healthy space for passive recreation, growing on land, and preserving the land and wildlife along with the sports fields. Additionally, a community-supported agricultural solution would leverage existing farmland and offers a model that has little or no cost to the town, while growing and selling healthy food to our residents, and in turn provides a support for educational programs and community events. All of these things, including sports, can coexist on Keisha to bring vibrancy, improve our health and well-being, and support our overall community. Thank you for listening. We look forward to continuing these conversations in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brenton. Anybody over there earlier? Mr. Young?
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I just don't know, Mayor, how we got to this point of, we had $7.5 million to spend due to COVID issues. And I don't understand how, all of a sudden, the only thing left on the table is putting in sports fields. That means you probably have $4 million left as a rough number that you're thinking of spending. And I can't understand how we're throwing all that money into one bucket. Over time, first of all, when we had to vote, the vote was 12,881 people came out to vote, town-wide. Out of that, 6,255 voters voted yes. 5,285 people voted no. And 945 people didn't vote on the Keisha Farm. That adds up to 12,881 votes. When we look at the votes that were cast for the Keisha Farm, it was 55.7% of those who voted for the Keisha Farm, not the full 100% of the people that voted, but it was 55.7%. The people that voted no on that was 44.3%. Now, when I start looking at these numbers and I start saying, okay, they created the Keisha Farm Commission or committee. How many, did they break it up? Those who voted yes and those who voted no on the Keisha committee? No, they did not. They front-loaded it, such as stacking the court. We all heard that term. They stacked the Keisha Commission with all people that wanted either fields, sports, or farming. On the agenda, on the vote, there was also another category called other government uses. That was totally ignored. Other government uses could mean a lot of things. One, do something with the property to generate funds, generate taxes. That's not a bad idea. And that's what I support. Generate homes 55 and over that do not burden the school systems. And you would get approximately 104 units, rough number. I've only been able to figure it up by square feet. When we do get that report on the layout of the property, then I'd want a copy of it, and I'll figure it out, okay? But the fact remains, we could, as a town, generate an extra $1 million a year in real estate taxes that would help keep everybody's taxes down. What we're being proposed here is they want to grab $4 million or more to build a sports complex, which is only going to satisfy a small group of people in Wethersfield. Go back and look at the number. 6,651 people voted for the farm. There's a good chance that all of them either wanted farming, they might have wanted trails, or they wanted sports. They didn't want to have houses. Maybe they did. But the fact remains, it ends up being a small percentage of our entire town that Mr. O'Connor, Mr. Pennelow, and Mr. Hill are suggesting we throw all that money into one package. And away it goes, and it's gone. And we shouldn't have that. If we go back into their resolution that they put out, and that's another disgusting thing, the resolution. They came out with a resolution on, August 1st? Then they came out with an amendment to it for the next meeting, which was, I believe, September 6th. And then just the other day, they came out with a third revision. It shows that the town is not stable. They don't know what the hell they're going to do. You don't know what you want to do. The first resolution should have been it, not start changing. I'm trying to read the agenda. I can't follow it, okay, to understand what happened. But the fact remains, they talk in here on the third line of it, that the results of the survey concluded that the town is overwhelmingly in favor utilizing Keisha Farm for sports fields and other activities. I debate that, but you know what? These people won't talk. They're hidden behind what they call attorney-client privilege, left and right. They won't talk about how they came up with their analysis. I can, and it's easy. And the fact is, if we could generate funds, revenue, nice homes that will sell, we'd get rid of our bond very quickly, we'd make a profit. We also then, for perpetuity, we'd be collecting a lot of money from that development. But these folks, they're not interested in that. And there's another item here I'm going to point out on the resolution. It's probably down around 8 or 10. It says, whereas the property cannot legally be sold or subdivided for private development purposes per bond council. On August 1st, when I saw that, I asked about it. Of course, no answer, because these people don't answer, okay? So I did an FOI. The answer is, it's none of your business what that statement means. That's exactly what it says, and these guys all voted to release it to me, and they wouldn't release it. Now, there's something really bad here that's going on, folks. And I don't know what it is, but it's going to take a lawyer to sort of dig in and find out and get that. It's only an opinion. An opinion is probably not worth a hell of a lot. And the lawyer sat here at the last meeting, and he recommended to these guys not to do anything with it, okay? Now, let's go on to another little subject on these resolutions, because I know we only have 10 minutes. And you're going to probably be reading. I'm going to be publishing stuff on a regular basis between now and whenever regarding this, because, Mayor, I've come before you and your council on a number of issues, and you haven't done a damn thing about any of them. Not a damn thing. You just sit here and vote for more spending and more spending. Now, on this second amendment, they talk about they want to put, and I think Mr. Forrest over here wrote it because his name was on it, put up solar panels and whatnot. And putting up solar panels, yeah, it might be okay, but the fact remains it's just another avenue to pull in a few people to vote for it or not to complain about it. And you know, in there it talks about our electric bill is high in Weathersfield. My electric bill at my house is high too, and we only have 2 people. But let me tell you, this is how it works. They're going to get whatever they want with their game plan, okay? And you and I are going to pay bills. You and I are going to pay for all the bills. Let me give you an example. Back 15 years ago, Mr. Forrest did a deal with the Historic Society here in Weathersfield. He and his pals voted and put together a package to where we get $100 a year rental for the Kinney Center. And any expenses over $3,000, you and I pick it up. This was a fantastic lawyer deal that was put together. Now, a couple months ago, with the new manager in here, I asked, provide me with the cost for the last 3 years for the Kinney Center, which you and I are paying that electric bill. Here it is, folks. And this is what's going to happen with the sports complex. Believe me, it will. In 2022, the town was paid $37,259 for electric bill on behalf of the Weathersfield Historic Society. Remember, they only give us $100 a year. What saps we are. But Mr. Forrest, he put us into this binder, okay? And in 2021, we paid $35,963 on behalf of the town, on behalf of the Weathersfield Historic Society. That's a private organization. You can't get a nickel out of them as far as any reports go that you ask. You're private.
Mr. Young, your
Yes,
10
I
minutes.
know, but the fact is, what I'm getting down to
summarize,
is,
please.
if you guys put this in, we're going to be stuck with another deal. Another deal we're going to get stuck with because Mr. Forrest has laid the foundation already for it, okay? But yeah, I'll be back, you know I'll be back, Mayor, and you're going to probably read about this. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Just one quick comment. Mr. Young had mentioned the town had received $7.6 million in ARPA funding. I think we've spent roughly about 3.5 of that already. 3.8. So it does leave us roughly $4 million. I don't believe it's the intention of this council to spend that full $4 million on this complex. So if anybody was listening to that and wanted to comment on that when they come up, that's not true. Mrs. Faber.
Thank you. Andrea Faber, 180 Oxyoke Drive. After the Tuesday, September 6th Town Council meeting, I did not think the proposed... Well, when you speak too close, you can't really hear people. Yeah, but if you get too close, it gets muffled. After the Tuesday, September 6th Town Council meeting, I did not think the proposed resolution would be in the best interest of the town. I agree that we need attention paid to our recreational facilities, including sports fields. I agree that something needs to be done at Keisha Farm. I also agree that there should be sports fields at Keisha Farm. The scope of the complex, as discussed in that meeting, concerned me. The amended resolution is a good start in addressing some of those concerns, and I'm looking forward to hearing more during this meeting. I think we should be looking at all of our recreational facilities and investing in their development and ongoing maintenance. Public-private partnerships are also interesting, provided that the interests of the families in the surrounding neighborhoods are taken into account. I think the Keisha Farm property should be developed with multiple uses in mind. The community weighed in and wants to see sports fields, walking trails, open space, farming, and educational uses. I believe that all of these ideas can be made a reality and fit in with the neighborhood if done with careful planning. I am hopeful that this amended resolution will help us move forward towards reaching that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't call you ma'am this time.
Oh, you remembered me. I made sure I dressed in more appropriate clothing, too. Good evening. My name is Giovanna Ehrlich. I live at 12 Hunters Path. I'm here to talk about the Keisha Farm and in support of the amended resolution or proposal. It's so interesting to hear everybody talk, and I do enjoy listening to it, and it just gets my brain stirring. So I have 3 words tonight: mindset, change, and perspective. 3 words that as parents and teachers we strive to teach our kids in school and at home. Not only do we teach them to learn about the meaning of these words, but we also like to use these as opportunity of teachable moments to help them understand that things in life and when we are faced with challenges in life as well. Sometimes as adults we lose sight of teachable moments, mindset, change, and perspective. So just give my little words of wisdom tonight. Tonight I wanted to touch base on those 3 words. First, mindset. I've been living in this town for 15 years. I have noticed the trend of fixed mindset. Tradition is a driving force that keeps this town great, but it's the same mindset that has pumped the brakes on many things that would have helped our town grow. Having lived in town for 15 years and being an active member of the youth sports community, it is evident that the fixed mindset is present. We can't share fields, we can't change routines, we can't fix things that need to be fixed because they aren't our priority. Many families that have or have had children in sports assume that things get done and the amazing volunteers and coaches and workers of the town will take care of it. But that's not always the case. Behind the scenes, there's much more. So much that it's impossible for the Parks and Rec Department to manage the maintenance and upkeep of the amount of work that is needed on our fields, between drainage, mowing, turning the fields, dealing with vandalism, lack of manpower, safety, and lastly, space. When we assume that things were good 15 years ago and that they're still good today, we are practicing a fixed mindset. That moves me on to the next word, change. Change is tough. We grapple with change, we get frustrated with change, and over time we accept change. Ultimately, change helps us grow, and this change will only make our community stronger. There hasn't been any major changes to the town's community parks and rec facilities in the last 15 years that I've lived in town. Just down the road, Newington put a new community center, Glastonbury has made a number of parks and fields, Cromwell continues to grow, and yet Wethersfield still remains stagnant for change because change is different. Lastly, perspective. Perspective is an interesting notion because we can see things in so many different perspectives. My daughter played soccer when she was younger, and there were 6 teams, each having 10-plus players on a team, all practicing various nights at Highcrest Field, all 6 teams happening at once, and typically on Saturdays, all 6 teams played and practiced at the same time. One of the biggest complaints that I keep hearing about the Keisha Farm development is traffic. I guess my wonder in the notion of perspective is, why is it not okay for the town to utilize space for the purposes that it was purchased in order to bring a community together that will include a parking lot, proper restroom facilities, avoid that really gross porta potty that sits by the baseball field, and unsafe road spaces due to cars? But it's okay to have 60-plus cars lined up and down the road from spring to fall, have cars lined up and down the street for sledding, have cars line up and down the street for nighttime concerts and shows at the barn because you're turning the map into a different direction or perspective. Our community needs change, and it's ready for change in order for it to continue to grow. Please consider utilizing the Keisha farmland as a community park complex where we can have fields, trails, community gardens, and keep the integrity of the original barn on Highland Street. Please consider turf fields rather than turf bubbles or domes. This would truly be a bipartisan effort in order to bring together all the changes or wants that the people showed up and spoke for during the Zoom meetings, the surveys, and part of the Keisha Farm Committee. If we all took the time to change our lens and looked at things in a different perspective, then we would challenge our community to help it grow and not be fixed on an era that's stuck in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ehrlich. Yes, sir.
Sean Fuss, 193 Clovercrest Road. Good evening. I'd like to express my support for the new amended proposed resolution regarding a sports complex in Wethersfield. I agree with the need for improved, maintained, and additional fields for sports in town. I appreciate the town council's consideration of Keisha Farm neighbors and friends in the proposal. Allowing the town manager an opportunity to look closely and carefully at all potential sites in town for a sports complex is in the best interests of all communities in Wethersfield. There is a way to be planful and thoughtful in determining an appropriate location for a sports complex, and taking a pause to get information from all stakeholders will accomplish that goal. Thank you to all members of the town council for your willingness to reach an agreement that supports the needs of everyone. Your dedication to this matter is much appreciated and does not go unrecognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuss. Did you have your hand up in the pink? Yes.
It takes me a moment to get there. I'll get it, don't worry.
As evidenced last meeting, we have all night.
And morning.
And morning, yes, sometimes, definitely.
I'm very, very impressed with the speakers, really. All of them, all the different points of view. I don't agree with all of them, but that's all right. Okay, my concern
is for the land.
Can you just
itself.
state your name and address?
Oh, sorry.
For the record.
My name is Alice Sennick. I live at 47 Somerset Street. I grew up here in Wethersfield, left for career purposes, returned about 35 years ago, and been here ever since. Okay, as you can imagine, I grew up in a very different Wethersfield. There were cows going down the street every morning and evening when I lived here as a child. Anyhow, there is something important in that. We are no longer an agricultural society or culture. Nevertheless, the land is important. It needs to be maintained, preserved for the purposes that will sustain us and give us resilience in the future. We are facing a serious crisis. It is a global concern, it is a national concern, and it should be also a local concern. We talk about our entertainments, our need for, tax base and all that. I think the sports idea, the complex, is a terrible idea. What you'll do is you'll lose tax base in terms of people who won't want to live in Wethersfield now, once it's established, and all of the disadvantages that the neighbors complain about will come to fruition. Their values, their real estate values will go down in the face of any kind of a use of that land of that nature. The other thing is, because we face climate change, because we cannot, in the near future, depend on supply being brought here. We just missed a disaster with the proposed railroad strike. You better have access to arable land in order to raise food locally. Therefore, I think I like the idea of greenhouses and science. Get state agricultural situation, people, science in here to tell you the most favorable use of land in order to preserve our resiliency in terms of being able to raise food locally. I am serious about this. This is something we are going to face. I grew up a child of the Depression. I lived through, my childhood was the Second World War, followed by the Korean War. We lived in terms of sacrifice. We also learned to live off the land because we had to feed troops during World War II. Everybody had a garden. Everybody collected whatever scrap, whatever was necessary. Oh, the Yale Street Gang won the prize for the most scrap metal, to contribute to the war, for things like that. So I know what it is when times change, when we're no longer as well set as we are currently in this moment. You better keep resiliency with regard to the use of land. And I don't want to drive all these good people that live in that area out of the town. Some people want change. I'm not sure that that change will serve the purposes of our children in the future. Anyhow, I think multiple uses are good, but preserve the arability of that ground in case you need it someday in the future. And that future may not be too far away. It can happen. Okay, I'm done. Thank you. Oh, one thing. I will add that I have lived in places that have been destroyed agriculturally. Places that once knew, good agriculture, but those who came after the original owners destroyed the irrigation systems and turned the place into a desert. And that's happened worldwide and many times through history. You want to destroy the country, destroy the land. Warning, sorry to be so bleak, but that's the truth.
Thank you, Ms. Sennick.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Back there with your hand up.
That darn cane. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Maureen Sweeney, and I live at 95 Grist Mill Road in Weathersfield. And I want to let you know I've been a Weathersfield resident for almost 60 years. I've grown up here, gone through the school system. All my 4 children have grown up here. I have 3 children that still live here. All of my grandchildren live in town. I'm very invested in this town. And when I heard the word sports complex, it scared the daylights out of me, because I just pictured Yankee Stadium over on Keisha Farm. And I guess I don't know, as much as I should know about it, but I just want to let you know, as counselors, that I did vote for the purchase of Keisha Farm. I've followed all of the surveys that have been done, where we've decided, we put our thoughts out, what we'd like to see, mixed use, et cetera. I'm very much in favor of mixed use. I'm very much in favor of progress. I think we do need some improvement on the fields, and having some fields and some restrooms and some parking, so we don't have that nightmare on Highland Street. I think that would all be great. Where I live, I'm not directly affected. I don't abut the property, but I am vested in this town, and the only thing we really don't have left is open space. And there's very little left in our town, and once it's gone, it's gone. So whatever we do, I hope we can preserve some of that property so that we can enjoy a little bit of open space, maybe some walking trails, things for our children, but I hope it's a multi-use piece of property. And so I guess my bottom line is I hope it doesn't get oversaturated, because we have an awful lot of that in this town, and it's really nice to have a little piece of open space left. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir, right in the back.
How you doing? Rob Malillo, 118 Cricket Knoll. I just came to listen, really, and I'm a huge proponent of helping the kids get the fields right, give them something to do, keep them busy. So I was here, pitching and supporting the lights for the high school. Big fan of that. I've coached in town more football games, baseball games than I can count. My kids are done. I still support it. I still go to the games. My backyard abuts the barn. Part of the reason I bought the property was beautiful, Got to know the family really well. Kids go down there, get their pumpkins, their apples. So I like the idea of using the land for something, but it doesn't sound like it's an overwhelming win to go fields. Some fields maybe, complex, I don't know enough about what complex means. We definitely need more fields, but one of the things that keeps bubbling up in my mind as I listen to people talk is how run down the fields are that we have. Well, instead of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, shouldn't we fix the boat first? So maybe we want to take a look at the fields, and with $4 million, what can we do with those fields that are there now? Can we make them world class? Can we take Cove Park and do something there? Can we put a couple of fields and a science center, not necessarily a complex, and find a happy medium? Because it sounds like it's all or nothing, and it seems a little quick. Maybe I'm late to the party getting all the facts down, but I think we should think about this a little longer. So that's all. Thanks.
Mr. Mr. Woodward.
Jim Woodworth, 33 Mill Street, 5H. I sent a letter, which I assume you all read carefully, but prompted by the sports complex idea, which came out of left field, it seems like, and then the discussion involved, let's use the whole north side of Highland Street for sports. No. As Alice Zenick said so eloquently, we need to preserve some farmland as much as we can. You can't do, we envision, and I know that's kind of a dream, but it's not an impossible dream to have a community farm. That's not just places for people to have gardens, but a community
farm that would have community-supported agriculture have enough room to really develop some vegetables, restart the vegetable stand, have a CSA where people would buy shares at the beginning and then receive vegetables. We have the option to do organic farming, which no one in town does. Even Rocky Hill doesn't have organic farms. There's a niche. There's a built-in customer base because the Keishas did such a great job over all those years of raising vegetables for the neighborhood. We can do this and not cost the town anything beyond the initial investment. Who knows how that would actually work out, but still, it's not the same as making some kind of sweetheart deal. It's an option. Starting with the Ag Viability Grant that is going to fund this study, land use study. I'm not sure where that's going right now, or spinning, I don't know what, but which will show us where the best fields would be, where where we could have a sports field, maybe 2 sports fields. I don't know if it would fit, and a parking lot. And I know the town needs that. I have kids in sports. I know the limitations. I know, I even took a look at Mill Woods. I'm not sure you can fit another field in there because you need a road and a parking lot and so forth. But the question is, COVID, ARPA funds should be to get kids outdoor with healthy outdoor exercise. It should not be a sports facility for the elite sports people to charge other people from other towns to pay money that's going to raise funds. No, it's not. And so if you can build one of those with private investment somewhere, fine, go ahead. But this ARPA money should go to improve those fields that we have and build that one accessible trail from High Crest parking lot over to the barn, the parking lot over there to the barn over here, and start the process of turning the facility, the Keisha Farm, into a facility that we can all be proud of, that brings the kind of vibe that we got down in Old Weathersfield up to the upland farmland in Keisha Farm. I don't know, I've got a lot of other thoughts, but I'm going to leave it at that. And thank you for the new possibilities there. But and just to conclude, $4 million doesn't go that far, but not one penny should be spent on an indoor facility for sports. It should be spent on all those outdoor fields which are there for the kids, not just the sports, the people that are going to be, that think they're going to get scholarships to go to college, but everybody to participate and learn those team values and so forth. But $4 million sounds like good. I'm glad you gave us that figure, because that was totally missing from everything. Not to mention how much a sports complex would cost, but forget it. Let's just not do that. Let's do what we need to do on the fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Woodworth. Anybody else? On the Keisha complex?
Yes.
Okay, for the second time, I think you're limited to 5 minutes.
Again, my name is John Scott, 174 Morgan Circle. Went through the school system here too. To my understanding, I could be wrong, but from what I heard, not one person wants a commercial sports complex on that land. Whatever else it is good. Thank you.
Anyone for the first time? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Soto, 76 Highland Street. I'm not in favor. When I first heard of sports complex, I was going for a walk, and a neighbor who lives up the street from me said, I asked him if he had a sign. I said, what is this sign for? He said, oh, they're going to build a massive sports complex. So I had visions of the bubble. It's in Windsor, Connecticut. You see off of 91, and it just does not belong in the neighborhood. people said like, oh, you don't want it in your neighborhood. It's not the fact that we don't want it in the neighborhood, but we don't need that type of facility in the neighborhood. First of all, there was never a plan that was established by anybody. We don't even know what it's going to look like. No traffic study, and I know because I live at the bottom of Highland Street where it intersects Copper Mill, and you could count the cars that run the stop sign every single day and night. And believe me, I've called the cops and I told them to park in front of my yard, and you could gather some revenue in that matter. And first of all, if the sports complex went through, you were looking at approximately $1 million just to upgrade the electrical, the sewer, the water, and the gas to feeding into this complex itself. I don't believe that Weathersfield can afford that. Also, we have an issue of noise pollution, the increase in traffic, the issue of light pollution. Nobody really understands what light pollution is, but if you drive by the high school, you'll see this light, and I feel sorry for the people who live near there. I mean, this thing is glowing like it's the sun. And also, I don't believe that a sports complex will bring money into the Weathersfield coffers. It's just not enough. I mean, when my kids were playing sports, I think we paid like $120 to go to FSA for the season for indoor sports. It doesn't generate enough money to lower our taxes at all. What else? I would like to have, when the neighbor told me about the sign, I'd like to have, a couple of fields in there, nothing like a dome, as somebody mentioned, that we might have, a walking trail, a community garden. Farmington has a community garden. When you go to play at the Farmington field over there, their gardens are always packed with people. That wouldn't be a bad idea at all. Well, what else? I mean, if you want to put a bubble for $600,000, there's 11 acres on the Berlin Turnpike. You have all the site utilities already there. It's easy accessible from 91. You don't have to worry about traffic. And I think if you want to do it there, that would be a great spot, or the old Weight Watchers building on the Silas Deane Highway. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Anyone else on the sports complex proposal? Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi, my name's Emily Lynch. I'm at 115 Collier Road. I'm the house right across from Keisha Farm. One of the main concerns that we have is about the traffic that will come if a sports complex is there. Anyone who lives in the area has probably heard speeding cars down the street. There have been, the speed limit signs put up that has done absolutely nothing. Police have been stationed there, has done absolutely nothing. So the thought of a sports complex, which first of all, you just imagine this big dome coming out above the trees, if any trees are left after it's built. But what's that going to do about the traffic? There's a lot of kids in the neighborhood. There's an elementary school there. What's that going to do about traffic? The idea of it being a multi-use space sounds wonderful, to be able to preserve the heritage of the farm, to have greenhouses, even a community garden. I would love to see an accessible playscape for kids of all abilities, and to maybe include more sports fields. But having a big dome open to the state will take away everything that the neighborhood is. We chose, Weathersfield as our forever home coming back from Boston, and the thought of that being overtaken by a sports complex is pretty heartbreaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on item 1B, installation of the sports complex. Now we move to general comments. This is the section where you are limited to 3 minutes. You can speak on any issues at hand before the town, even follow up on anything. Yes, sir, in the red.
Hello, Council. I'm Nick Rashio. I live at 125 Walcott Hill Road. And since I only have 3 minutes, I'll make this quick. I've heard a lot of not in my backyard. I do want Charles Wright Elementary School in my backyard. There's been a lot about the bond referendum that have gone out. I sent an email. Mayor Rell and Deputy Mayor Mazzarella both very graciously responded to my comments. I'm not addressing that today. I'm addressing a few different things. First of all, his words are important. Secondly, people are important. I keep hearing the state as part of this bond referendum for the school. I keep hearing about ARPA funds. All those are taxpayers. Those monies come from somewhere. I looked at the bond referendum that came out today, and from a Charles Wright standpoint, we've become what I can only say is a byline. After $279 million in the ordinance, it says $279 million, or, quote, so much as may be necessary after deducting grants therefore. You look at the explanatory text. At the very bottom, it says on project completion, the demolition of old Highcrest and Charles Wright buildings will take place. Last time I checked, in the school listing I had, there's actually numbers that have $6.8 million embedded in the $279 million. The bond referendum language is absolutely wrong. It is unconscionable to me that we could say after phase 3 is done, $7 million just evaporates somewhere. I don't know where it went. And secondly, and knowing I have limited time, I'd like to say that graphs can do one of two things. They can either display facts or they can deflect facts. Right now, as I read this graph that was presented in the agenda minutes states existing and projected debt service, which goes down to 0 for existing debt service, which if anybody believes that I have bridge to sell, I added them up. I took out the existing debt service, and it comes to 26 years of financing, with the exception of some of the minimal years, to the tune of $267 million. If you take out the existing debt service, you're down to $233 million, which leads me to believe that the bond commissioner, whoever put this together, actually deemed that people in Wethersfield wouldn't figure out how to add numbers together and realized that this assumes we're getting money from the state, the taxpayers. Last time I checked, we shouldn't count our chickens before they're hatched. Secondarily, tax impact of incremental debt service, again, based on the town's share projected of $168,252,980. If I take into account with the 4% 20-year bond that's in there, numbers just don't add up. That interest is amazing to me that we're going to present this as we've already got $111 million in the bank. I haven't seen it, unless somebody in Wethersfield tells me the town coffers is $111 million more. I don't know where it is. Continue to look through this, and again, I look through this ordinance. There is absolutely nothing in here that caps anything. There is no cap whatsoever to any expense. There's an appropriation, or as much as we need. We're appropriating $279 million for $278,366,545 for a bond that we believe we're going to project the cost of Wethersfield taxpayers based on only being $168. So $111 million that has to come from somewhere. I think it's disingenuous. And secondarily, and lastly, as my time is running out, Charles Wright School is the heart and soul of that area of Wethersfield. What you've done is you've pre-written an answer, and now you're backtracking. People talk about $4 million in ARPA funds, $4 million of taxpayer funds. If Wethersfield has $279 million plus financing costs, it's going to be over $350 million. Last time I checked, last year's budget was approximately $115 million in expenditures. Taxes accounted for about 96 and change, 97 million. If I look at this way, that's our whole town budget, if it ends up being $350 million for almost 4 years. I cannot understand how it's a 20-year bond in this referendum language, but it's 26 years of financing. I can't understand how you carved out $7 million of this project separate and apart from what's embedded in the financing. And for the life of me, I cannot understand what I heard last meeting, that people in Charles Wright have no voice. We do. Maybe the silent majority, but I will make it my goal before that referendum to vote no.
Thank you. Anybody else on general matters? Mr. Young, then Mr. Woodworth.
Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. There was some mention earlier about organic farming on the Keisha farm. Well, I put gardens in myself, and they're organic. Unfortunately, we get bugs. We get these big bugs that go all over the squash and on the different things, because we don't spray it. And once you spray it, it's not organic anymore. So I would try to stay away from organic, because I think it's extremely expensive for a farmer to run an organic farm. You're better off going to Whole Foods and buying it. There was some mention here about the ability of the town to generate revenue on debt service to Keisha Farm will now be present. You know, we're now going to, if we go with this fiasco, we'll probably get some kind of revenue. But you know, Mayor, there has been no history whatsoever in our sports programs of generating any money that comes back to the taxpayer. And what I mean by that is, when it comes time for Catone Field, which Mr. O'Connor was a great component for, lights, turf, we citizens had to pay for that. And then when the turf had to be replaced, they didn't have any money to throw in to put the new artificial turf on. Matter of fact, they didn't even have records of their money that was coming in, with the exception, the gate receipts and the concession money went into something called a Student Activity Fund, which is not audited by anybody. By anybody, guys. You get it? Check, money is deposited for gate receipts, and that amount of money, there's a check written out for that same amount of money, and it goes to CAIC, Connecticut Athletic, whatever the heck they're called. And it goes to pay for the coaches. And there's no money left for the citizens to recoup on the turf that they're building. It's a losing battle to put any kind of turf on. Just put grass down, and that's the end of it, because we're going to lose more money. And then, as I mentioned a few minutes ago when I was up here first about the expenses you're going to incur, the town taxpayers are going to pick them up, just like we are currently picking up the Wethersfield Historic Society. And that's a big number, and none of you will even talk about it. And that's a shame, because we need to have a conversation. We also have another place called the Little Red Schoolhouse down here on Wells Road. They have been in that building since 1970s. They've never paid an ounce of rent. They've never paid anything to the town of Wethersfield. And the only thing they do is when a window needs to be replaced, or a roof needs to be replaced, or the asphalt needs to be replaced, the town of Wethersfield goes in and repairs it. And not one person up on this council has ever talked about that. Why not? You know that's going on. Sally, whatever her name is, should have been telling you that. When you've been asking for them for a lean budget, you didn't get a lean budget. Those people are free as birds. And if you notice in the real reminder for the past 4 weeks, big ads to come to their art league school and take classes. Yet they have no expenses. Can you imagine being a company just down on Celestine Highway who's paying rent, electric, insurance, and all this kind of stuff, and trying to run a business and paying for employees? These guys don't pay for anything. We do. And it's because of these people. They will not even talk about it. And I'm going to continue talking about it. And I hope some citizens will join me in talking about it, because I have the information. So really, I don't see any need for putting in any kind of sports stuff. I think what we should do is 100% of our citizens here ride on the roads. Let's throw $4 million into our road program and really bring it up to speed. We struggle every year. What do we put in? $1.1 million of annual money, current money, into putting in the roads. Let's put the 4,000 in it. And that satisfies everybody. Well, some of those neighborhoods have some terrible roads, Mayor, and they would appreciate it. So I would hope that you would consider it's the best way out. And if we put homes on that property, there's no children because they're over 55. They don't reproduce, but they pay good taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Mr. Woodworth.
Jim Woodworth, 33 Mill Street, 5H. I'm wearing my Keisha T-shirt because Saturday morning is an opportunity to see what could happen at the Keisha Farm. It's the Fall Family Harvest Festival, and there's displays and story reading and some antique agricultural equipment and so forth, and it's going to be a beautiful sunny day, so bring your little kids, kindergarten to third grade, and learn a little bit about agriculture and the outdoors. Second of all, wearing my Great Meadows Conservation Trust hat, on the same time, and the same beautiful Saturday morning, 9 to 12, you can come down to the Cove and pick up the trash that people throw all over the place. We've been doing that for 25 years. I'm missing it this year for the first time. But the opportunity is there, and the trash is there, unfortunately. So come join us, one place or the other. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Woodworth. That Source to Sea cleanup is very productive. I've joined it for the past couple of years, and we do take out bag loads of trash. I try to do the same with my son every time we go fishing there, too. So,
It's much appreciated. I know many of you have participated, and the opportunity is there. This is with the Great Meadows Trust organizes it locally, but it's with the Connecticut River Conservancy, which is from the Source to the Sea organization that cleans up the river and so forth. In fact, the Great Meadows Trust guys are people, not just guys, are taking a kayak ride down the river on Friday to pick up the trash all the way down from the Cove down to the ferry landing, and then they'll be back on Saturday to help out with the trash there. So join them all.
do a great job. And hats off to our town manager and physical services and Parks and Rec. We do have extra garbage cans down there now that are covered, that keep the wind from blowing out garbage, but more importantly, seagulls and wildlife from taking it out. So thanks for the advocacy for that over the years. We did, I don't know how many more we put in there, but we definitely did. Anybody else for public comment? Okay. Kind of a quiet bunch tonight. Compared to others. Okay. Council reports on boards and commissions from any members. Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two. First is the Veterans Commission. I attended the meeting on Wednesday, September 7th. A couple important items to report from that. One is we have two student representatives, and one of the goals when we created the Veterans Commission was to connect veterans with our students. So we have two student reps. And secondly, the Veterans Commission would like to come here and address the council about some of the things they are doing. And then along with the Veterans Commission, last week I attended the Veterans Seminar, which was held on the 15th at the Pitkin Community Center. And the purpose of that was to provide our veterans with services. We had over 10 state participating veterans organizations there to talk to the veterans about the different services they qualify for. So the Veterans Commission is doing a great job. And lastly, tonight before this meeting, I attended the Wethersfield Advisory Committee for people with disabilities, and their big issue that they lobbied me for is, I guess years ago, they used to be funded by the council, and they're asking for that to be funded again. I'm sure that will bubble up again, but it's an active committee. It does a lot of important advocacy work for people with disabilities in Wethersfield. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Yeah, I guess we'll have to ask Mike O'Neill to look into the funding for the Advisory Committee on Disabilities. Maybe Councilman Forrest remembers. I don't remember ever taking it out, but I don't remember it ever being in there either.
Yeah, I think it's been in, I think it has been in there in the past, but sometimes it's done a little bit more on an ad hoc basis if they have a particular event that they're planning or something like that. But of course, I think we'll consider all the requests from all the committees.
Anybody else with any reports from boards or commissions for us tonight? If If,
I was going to say Joy is here tonight to present, so.
okay, for the EDIC.
EDIC and RDA,
Yep, yeah, thank you for sitting in on those, Councilman Pentelow. Council comments on any topic before us? Councilman Lesser?
I apologize, and I'll be quick, but it is important. Last Monday night, we had the Weathersfield Mayor's Ball charitable event, and we raised $13,000. Thank you, Mayor, for your great partnership. Thank you to Councilor Carbone, who's there, Deputy Mayor was there, Fred. Appreciate all you guys making the effort to be there and support. And we're doing three things, which is one, the backpack program to help kids who are hungry in Weathersfield, providing them food. We're helping approximately 80 seniors, some of the poorest seniors in town, with a commodity box of fresh produce. And third, some of the money will go to preschool scholarships for kids in Weathersfield to attend preschool who might otherwise not. They will get some money to potentially go to preschool. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I must concur. That is a great event. It was well attended. It was a great night. Thank you to not only the committee, Christina Orsini, Annie Dillon for their hard work, Bryce Hardy for opening the doors on a Monday night at the Charles, and thank you for everybody from the public that came and donated and enjoyed a good time. I concur that it's great to see the folks from Weathersfield stepping up. One thing I wanted to mention, again, the community stepping up. Town manager, myself, and Kathy Bagley from Parks and Rec were at the donation of two flags, I believe 5x9 flags on POW Day. DeSoto Funeral Home, again, Christina Orsini, they do a lot for this town, donated a POW flag and an American flag to be flown, I believe, on Church and Main Street at that location. So thank you to DeSoto Funeral Home for all they do. They do the turkey drive, they do the food drive. They graciously donated these two flags for the town. Can't thank them enough for that. I hate to say it, we're at the last meeting of September, and it's going to be fall very soon. And I know it had been mentioned by a few folks about all the activity going on in Old Weathersfield. It's Scarecrows on Main is coming back up for October 1st. If there's any folks that are questioning whether or not their schools, their kids' schools themselves, their loved ones want to create, I believe there is still space for a Scarecrow on Main. Again, it's great publicity for the schools, the groups, the businesses that donate time to create those, and it's great for the town to get people into Old Weathersfield and into all Weathersfield to take a look at those. That's about all I've got. Anybody else with any general comments before us tonight? Okay, in the interest of time, we'll move down to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, I do want to just once again extend congratulations to the police officers that were promoted this evening, and welcome again to Captain Mark Petruzzi. I think you saw tonight, and for all the men and women that serve on our police department, we have a fantastic police department here, and they continue to excel and improve, and I just want to thank them all. Also want to thank our fire chief, Rich Bailey. His last day as fire chief is today. So Rich is retiring after 10 years. There's a term limit there, so 10 years is the max. So I want to thank Rich for his years of service, not just as chief, but on the volunteer force throughout his career. And so if you see him, thank him for his service. And we're in the process now of selecting his replacement, which should be coming in a few weeks. Finally, I just want to note that September 15th was the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. And I just want to recognize and thank all the residents we have of Hispanic descent here in Weathersfield for their many contributions, not just culturally, but also economically. A lot of business owners here in town, as well as the artistic contributions. So I just want to note that for the 15th through October 15th is Hispanic Heritage Month. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. And Sue, Town Clerk, comments or communications?
We're getting ready for the
election in November. We've received close to 70 applications so far for absentee ballots. They'll become available on October 7th to go out in the mail. And we're ordering ballots and continue to be very busy with land records. It's picking back up again. Unfortunately, in those we have some foreclosures are picking up too, and we're very busy in the office.
Okay. Thank you, Sue. Moving down to item B, council action. I don't believe we have any acceptances of resignations or appointments to boards and commissions tonight. Oh, yes, actually, thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I would like to put out there a motion to open the agenda for new business. This would be to discuss reopening the Wethersfield High School pool for the months of October to May.
Where are you going to put it?
It would be in other business, no, it would, new business 6C.
6C. So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I do have it in my notes, but I did gloss over that one. No appointments, no resignations. Item B2A, approval of ordinances and resolutions. We have the smoke-free town facilities ordinance before us. And I don't know if the town manager or, oh, Kathy is here. Oh, okay. Thank you, Kathy, for coming.
Good evening, Kathy Bagley, Director of Parks and Recreation Department. In front of you tonight is an ordinance for our parks. It was through the recommendation of Councilmember Ken Lesser and the support of the Parks and Recreation Board. They've had numerous discussions on this, and they'd like to request that we do make all our parks and recreation facilities smoke-free, tobacco-free, and cannabis-free for the health and safety of members of our community, especially our children.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mrs. Bagley on this? Councilman O'Connor?
First, I don't have an issue at all with this resolution. I'm just curious on the means in which you plan to administer this. Can you walk through exactly what's going to happen if somebody is, say, chewing tobacco in their car? Will they be issued a citation?
We would our first step, should it be approved tonight, would be to get signage up in all the parks. So that would be number one, to have very clear signage, 1 or 2 signs or more if necessary in some of the bigger parks. So we would start with that. Regarding enforcement, it would be a town ordinance. And I think the way we would look at it is if we discovered that there were areas where people were just abusing this, then we would work with the police to come up with methods to do some education, and then if we had to take the next step towards fines. We're not looking at fines, we're trying to do this from a health and safety perspective, and also from just the people. We've had a lot of residents bring it up to us that they're tired of seeing the smoking, the tobacco chewing at our facilities, our youth sports groups, fields, and the games. So this is the first step.
Yeah, I will just continue on that, and I think that's a great first step. I'm just trying to visualize men's softball playing, and there's a guy in the outfield chewing tobacco and spitting. The police are going to walk onto the field and give him a ticket. Like, I'm just trying to, because technically they could do that. And so I'm just trying to figure, and does this, say there's a parent who goes to watch, and by the way, I'm not encouraging this, so I'm just trying to figure this out logistically. Say there's a parent who is a smoker and they go to watch their kid play soccer, and at the end of a quarter, I don't even know, half, whatever they call it, I'm a football guy. At the end of, when they take a break, and they take a break, the parent goes into the car to smoke, sit away from everybody else, they could get a citation. Like, where does that line get crossed? If they're in their car, we're now telling them what they can't even do in their car because they're in the parking lot, and then town workers who might smoke, and they're going in to cut the lawns, they're not allowed to smoke now. And so I'm just trying to understand, where does that line get crossed? I absolutely support, there shouldn't be people smoking on public, we don't allow them to smoke at town hall, but there are smoking designations, right? And so that's what I'm trying to understand, is that being factored in, or is someone really going to go knock on the window of this parent who decided to go have a cigarette in their car?
Well, I think we're going to look at that. I think, to go back to your first statement where you said men's softball, you said Little League, those kinds of things, we're going to work with those groups to educate them, to get the word out that we don't want to tolerate it in the parks, and it will be illegal. So I think the education piece is going to be very important. And I also think public pressure out there. We have signs up at Mikey's place that say, please refrain from smoking for the safety and health of the children, and we don't have a problem there. Okay. So, and we've also talked to neighboring towns, and this is also across the country. It's not like we're going to be asking the police to go out and enforce. That's really not the purpose. This is to get everyone to kind of work together. And one of my statistics that I did find from the state of Connecticut, 81% of Connecticut adult residents do not smoke. So I think the majority is there. It's just with the minority we have to work on. But I'm not looking for the police to be there every night in every park to do something like that. I think we have to really look at education and just public pressure from people.
I'm just curious on how that was going to work. Thank you.
Any other questions? Along those similar lines, and I know cannabis use has been in the news a lot lately with adult cannabis and adult recreational cannabis being legalized. I don't think it's gone into effect fully where there's grow facilities or anything like that, so it's not in the mass population just yet. But there are edibles that I read, and I don't know, gummy bears or lollipops or whatever it is right now that's infused with cannabis. Would that be something that, I understand, you know, you don't want somebody smoking a marijuana joint right next to you or 10 feet away from you down the soccer field or anything like that. But edibles, are they considered a cannabis product? And if they are eating those or consuming those, would that be something that this would be, not targeting, but looking at those individuals who may be consuming cannabis but not smoking it?
Yes, it would still, it's anything that has cannabis in it. So it would be a product that has, any product that has cannabis in it.
Okay.
And that is identified in the definitions of the proposed ordinance.
Okay. And along the same lines, you can educate the public first before we enforce. Got it. Okay. Any other questions or comments for this? Miss Councilman Lesser, do you want to do us the honor of a motion tonight?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Do you have it handy? I'm looking. No.
Right, actually.
Thank you. The town manager provided. Thank you. I make a motion to approve the ordinance designated town parks and recreation areas tobacco and cannabis-free and smoke-free.
Second.
Further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sue, did you get the motion in a second?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one. Oh, yeah, same thing. This is item 2B, or actually B2B, installation of a sports complex. Discussion? Councilman Hill?
Thank you, Mayor, appreciate it. And to everyone that did come out and reach out to us the past couple of weeks. All the input has been actually greatly appreciated, whether on either side of the issue that you're on here. But one thing I kind of wanted to highlight is Mr. Losella brought up a comment that I wrote down here that, you know, many people have let their imagination kind of run away with them in regards to what we're really attempting to do here. And I'll only speak for myself, but I think it's important to know first what this resolution, whether the original proposal and even this proposed amendment that we'll get to in a few moments, but first, what does it not do? It does not appropriate any money. It does not make any policy changes in regards to the farm. It does not preclude any other use of the farm. We're not building anything. This is a non-binding resolution. Since I've been on the town council, we've had resolutions on denouncing racism and Brainerd Airport, yet, you know, despite those strongly worded statements, racism exists, and we still have planes over Old Weathersfield. So that's just kind of, that just kind of shows you what this resolution doesn't do. So what does it do? The point of all these is to establish intent, give the town manager direction on what we would like to see. Now, we're trying to point the town manager so he can give us some information, an analysis. So what can we do with this property? Can we put this here? What will it look like? What will it cost the town? Can we address all the issues in regards to traffic? Can we address the issues? What will do to property values? Answer all those questions so that he can come back to us and we can then make an informed decision on whether, hey, this is not a good spot for it, or maybe it is, maybe it's better for someplace else. So to that point, I completely understand all of the apprehension, especially if you live in this neighborhood. You're abutting 32 acres of open space that the town owns and doesn't know what to do with. So I could understand that if you live near there and there's any proposal comes up, I also would be on my heels. I mean, I live in Old Weathersfield. I feel like on Main Street, something changes every day. And so if I lived on that huge open space, non-developed land, I'd feel the exact same way, because we don't have a path forward. And what we're trying to attempt to do here, I think, again, from my perspective, this isn't even step one of what to do. It's step 0. We need more information. We don't have a plan here. Keisha Farm Committee did terrific work, a ton of recommendations that we all received regarding, you heard many of them talk about them tonight. This is probably the most ambitious of all of the recommendations. So we said, you know what, let's start there. Can this be done? There's a demonstrated need in town for more of these fields. Let's try to, you know, put our head down and see if this can happen. And that's really what the attempt here is, you know, try to do. And really, you know, if you're talking about this original version or this new amended one, that I think has got some good support, especially from the folks from Keisha, they really do the same thing. The town manager is still going to have to do an analysis. He's still going to have to answer all those questions. He's still going to have to engage with folks, you know, not now with this new amended version, be Keisha and other properties. So I think that's a fine balance. But as we get to the amended version, I will just like to say I'd encourage my fellow councilors to support it. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments? Councilman O'Connor.
Thank you. I absolutely echo Councilor Hill's comments. I do want to address a couple of comments that were made in public, and, you know, one of the first things is, you know, this insinuation that this came out of left field. And I want to just cite some examples, and sadly, it feels like it came out of left field because previous councils have generally listened to committee reports that come up and they nod their head and they say, thank you for all your service, and then they take that report and they file it. And I'll give you an example. 30 years ago, they did a Silas Deane master plan. Well, a shovel has never been lifted in 30 years to even start doing anything on that. 20 years ago, they did a master plan for Mill Woods. A shovel has never been lifted to do anything on that. Now they do this plan where Keisha Farms Committee comes up and you have a council up here that says, you know what, we should do something because this is what you're supposed to do. And a group of volunteers get together and they dedicated, I think it was over a year of their time, to assess this field and figure out what to do with this field based on what voters were voting for, based on the surveys they took and what the majority use case was. That is what we as a council chose to do. So it didn't really come out of left field. In fact, this began 4 years ago. So, you know, the thought process that, no, this is a rush and all of that, it's not really a rush because it's been going on for over 4 years. We got a great report for the committee. The number one use case was the use of sports fields. It is definitely a need. And when I listen to speakers come up and mention how, why don't we take this money and use it to fix the fields we have? That sounds great in theory, but in practicality is Charles Wright you can't make longer. You'd have to knock down part of Charles Wright, or you'd have to go into a neighbor's backyard. So we can't fix that field. It will never be a usable lacrosse field, which is now what the girls use as a program. Mill Woods we can never fix because every year the Keene Foundation does its carnival and destroys that field. So if we put hundreds of thousands of dollars onto that field, it would only be destroyed after the Keene Carnival takes its place. So there are some fields you just can't maintain and fix. And so we as a town have been just kind of surviving and plowing through them. I'll give you another example. 20 years ago when Catone Field was filled with rocks and glass in the middle of the field, and the initiative to put turf on that field came up. A lot of the concerns that came up from neighbors on Keisha Farms is exactly what came up for Catone Farm, came up for Catone Field. But the reality was, you know what? The town worked with the neighbors on that. The town made sure the lights weren't on 24/7. The town made sure the noise was turned to a decibel. They weren't playing music at 9 a.m. till 12 a.m. on Sundays. They changed the youth football schedule to accommodate neighbors. So the town worked with the neighbors in these programs. The insinuation that we're bringing a mega complex in there. Let me tell you something right now. Nobody on this council supports a mega complex. If you think there's a mega complex coming in here, it's because someone misled you. They misinformed you intentionally to lead you to that conclusion. No one up here said we're putting a bubble. No one said that. What they talked about in this resolution was to look at this, is this a facility that we can take and address some of the needs in town? Wouldn't it be great if we did have a turf field, if we could put a roof over that so the kids could use it year-round? It was never a bubble. The thought, and again, this was just a thought, and this is why we asked the town manager to explore it, was to have a barn shape that would blend right in there, a big red barn, which facilities have done across the state. And they blend right into farmland. The idea that lights would be going around year-round all night long, well, if it's an indoor facility, the lights are inside. And so I just feel like there was a lot of misinformation that was being intentionally fed to drum up support. Nobody up here wants to interfere in that neighborhood. What we want to do is take advantage of what the town bought and try to provide a useful resource for all of the town to share. And you can do that, and you can do it in a way that is respectful to the neighbors. Because Catone Field is a perfect example. The house values around Catone Field, if you look at what the houses were worth pre-Catone and after Catone, they went up exponentially. We consulted realtors. Do you know what realtors said? If Weathersfield builds a facility like this, the home values around here will go up astronomically because people will want to come to this town and live. So instead of, I would say, I wouldn't buy into the hype, because all we wanted to do was to have the town manager explore this option and find out what we can do. Nowhere in the resolution did it say it couldn't be multi-use, yet resident after resident came up and said it's a single-use facility. That's not even true. We all wanted to support multi-use. But people come up and think, no, we're building a mega complex that's a single use. It's not true. And my name's on that resolution. I did not support that. $7 million are going into this. We don't have $7 million to put into this, so that's not even accurate. No one wants to put that type of money into it. We're waiting for the town manager to come back to us with a plan. This was to get, as Councilor Hill said, to get the ball moving. The other thing, out-of-state people coming in, massive traffic. I don't know how much more traffic we can get than you go and watch a Little League game, a fall Little League game being played with soccer on that field on the High Crest side, or how much traffic shows up for these barn events and all of that. They park on the street. If there was traffic, they'd be pulling into a field off of the street, and where's the traffic going to be? And so I just think there's been a lot of misinformation and hype, and it was always been in the negative side. And if you came up and asked anyone up here, they would have answered the question truthfully, saying, well, that's not true. And that was my point of this whole thing, and I echo 100% what Councilor Hill had said is, this is a start. This is simply a start to see, can we do this? We already listened to the community because we took out, hey, let's not just solely focus in on Keisha. I'm open to it. Everybody up here is open to the fact is if there's a better place to put this, the need is still existing. Whether Keisha's the right place or not, well, we'll have the town manager come back to us. And if he finds a place on the Silas, Deane, or the Berlin Turnpike that can support that, awesome, great. But the idea is, I think what I would ask is, ask someone on the council before you listen to someone on the street telling you what they want you to hear to achieve their own agenda. Because none of it was true. It wasn't really accurate to what they were saying. I think you'll find there's a very listening council. This is a bipartisan resolution. It's not being driven by Republican or Democrat. It's being driven by a council. And so I'm passionate about it because I do think this is what the town needs. I think the town can benefit from this. And I'm not going to jam it down anybody's throat around Keisha Farms, but I do think it's something the town should do, and we'll do it right. And so I would just ask you to have patience and faith and be a part of that and speak your mind. Please know the facts when you come up and say them, because there's been a lot of misinformation that's just not accurate. And so I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments? Sure.
Yeah, I'll just make mine brief. I feel like because, I was also one of the co-authors of this, I think I should speak, but I don't know if I could really add to what the combination of Kevin and, Dan taking his 20 minutes to take everything. But no, I really would. I think the intention of this resolution, at least in my mind, was to take the results of the survey that the Keisha Farm Committee did, look at the number one result, and look to bring something unique to that piece of property that has laid essentially dormant for 4 years since it was purchased. So, I think all this resolution really does is utilize the talent of our town manager. Part of the reason why he was hired, it was his experience in economic development. So what this really does is give him direction as to what we think that what would be potentially, according to this survey, as the top use for that facility. And nowhere in this does it inhibit any other thing. I'm actually in favor of it being multi-use. I would love to see a place where I could go buy local vegetables. I think there's plenty of space for that. I think there would be a great place to walk my crazy dog. This doesn't inhibit any of that. So I would just sort of echo Dan and Kevin's and welcoming everybody to vote yes on this resolution.
Any further comment?
I'll say one thing.
Councilwoman Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. There's a lot of people talking about the impact on the neighborhood. That is my neighborhood. I lived on Highland, and now I live on Cedar Brook. So I'm really intimately involved with this neighborhood. And I can tell you that we're going to be as thoughtful as possible. I have friends and I have family that live adjacent to Keisha on all sides, and I would not want any of this to impact them negatively. And I think there's a way that we're trying to get this done. Hopefully we have a lot of input, and that is one of my goals as one of the council members, to have input what goes into this and to make it so again, all the residents can utilize it. And all these components everybody wants is what we're trying to put in there. Like you said, walking trails and a beautiful barn with the greenhouse and, the gardens, everything, education, all of that stuff. So I echo, have patience with us. We're trying to get there, and we're working on it. We need more information, and you'll get it when we get it. So that's it.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilman Forrest?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the town manager. As I'm reading this particular, just so we're clear, we're all talking about the amended version, right?
Yes.
Okay. When I'm looking at the amended version, I'm noticed on the section "Be it resolved," it talks about the development of multi-sports fields, including not limited to indoor-outdoor facility, et cetera. And it allows the town manager to go and search around and determine what's best for Weathersfield. All makes perfect sense. On our regular annual budgets, though, we also have several line items which are for sports fields and improvement and development of those sports fields. Are we anticipating that, or could we anticipate, even within the wording of this current resolution, that in addition to all that we've said, that there's also consideration for our current sports fields and any development that those particular sports fields needs as well? So if we do take that holistic approach, and I'm on board with the additional sports fields, my kids play sports, we've been growing up in the whole bit, and that's why this was relatively easy, I think, to come to you guys did a great job discussing it, wordsmithing it, getting to a part where we're going to probably have a pretty easy vote here, actually. But I'm asking, can we include all the rest of those line items that we already have for the rest of our sports fields as a little bit of a holistic approach? You might say, hey, two more new fields, you find the right location for them, but it would be great to also improve these 4 fields on the way through as well, so that we could have a good analysis of our current sporting complexes and the appropriate use of the ARPA funds throughout.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Forrest, I would say yes, absolutely. That's something that we will look at. I would say beyond, though, just regular maintenance, because those items are still up for consideration for you all that we will discuss in the ARPA work session, because Kathy's provided an extensive list of projects on some of the existing fields for maintenance that has perhaps been neglected over the years that I think have been in several times now that we're going to be moving forward. But beyond those, there might very well be opportunities to repurpose certain fields, to reconfigure, to take something and make it more useful to what the needs are today. So yes, we'll be looking at all that.
That's I think that's great to hear, and I encourage that as well. And I think that I was just at my child's baseball practice on Costello Field now, and the third base, it's actually dangerous to get a ground ball during third base, or you get one in the eye. So there's a lot of other aspects where I think those fields could be upgraded or improved to get more use out of those fields as well, because of maybe some technical issues. So completely support this agenda item, as well as really want to congratulate maybe to some extent, Councilors O'Connor, Councilors Pentelow, Councilors Hill for bringing this, working together, listening, of course, to the public, and getting to a spot where we can have good unity of purpose. Thanks.
Thank you. This is where I hate to be last on this and simply say I echo the thoughts of all those who had spoken, but I really do. I think everybody has said it. It's been a bipartisan effort on this. Thank you to our town manager for working with the 3 councilors who are on this resolution, bringing everybody together. I want to also thank the public for coming in, not only on the 6th, but prior to that, as well as writing in. I may not have been able to get back to everybody who's written to me or to the full council, but your concerns, valid concerns, were brought to us. We read them, we heard them, we listened through the public hearing last week. It's a great testament of how we can work together to come to a compromise on this. I also echo the concerns. I think Councilman O'Connor had brought it up. Some others had brought it up earlier. The lacrosse fields on Charles Wright concern me, and I'll get into that in a second. But I don't believe that's a regulation size field for girls lacrosse. The field at Cove Park, which Councilman O'Connor had mentioned in the beginning of the season, had taken a beating throughout the fall, the winter, and in the springtime we had heard from parents of that organization that the fields weren't playable at first, so they had to move them and rearrange everything. That's constant. That's the constant battle that this town, and I know Kathy Bagley and her department from Parks and Rec are constantly dealing with. One field may not be usable, so it displaces another team playing on another field. We kind of want to get that taken care of so that we have enough fields to be able to handle all the sports. Somebody had mentioned 15 years ago, there wasn't the field hockey program wasn't existing. Youth lacrosse hadn't existed. Soccer, I think somebody had mentioned their kids from, I forget which year. I think it was about the same year my daughter started. She still plays soccer. 6 teams back then. I don't know how many teams there are now for youth soccer. Exponentially, it goes and goes and goes. The concern I had about Charles Wright, and I have it about Hanmer School and Highcrest. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I do recall hearing from either the superintendent or Chuck Worthington that not included in the $278 million are the fields for the schools. Am I correct? I mean, do you guys remember that at all from any of the conversations? So if we're going to displace the field at Standish Park, the baseball field at Standish Park, build the school there, the idea is to move the existing baseball field over to where the parking lot is. I don't know if there's funds included in this $278 million that we're going to be voting on next to build that field. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They're not. No, I heard the same thing. I do not believe there was any funds to build those fields after the schools are being leveled.
So that's disturbing to think that even directly across the street from where this proposal is, there's a baseball and softball, or baseball and soccer field, that they may be displaced to build a new school. And listen, at some point, a future council may vote to put funding in for fields to be next to schools. I mean, they should be. But until that point, we are going to now lose 2 fields, a baseball field, 2 baseball fields and a soccer field. And I don't know what we're going to do with Charles Wright if that closes. Even if we do keep it, that field is not acceptable for the sports that are currently being played on it. So I again, congratulate those that worked on this. Thank you to the town manager for bringing everybody together and listening to the concerns that the public had. But I want to, add to those that there would be a loss of fields if the school referendum does pass. Finally, and I'll say it as I said last time, the final be it resolved. I do appreciate where it says, but not limited to an indoor-outdoor complex, and it lists a number of sports and programs that could be utilized there. I will say it again.
I wasn't going to say it.
It does say field hockey, but I think it could say field hockey and hockey if we could look into that, if there are, folks. Weathersfield situates itself perfectly right in the middle of the state practically, where youth hockey has a lot of options around here. We have a number of towns that have hockey rinks in them. If we're really saying build new, we could look at an indoor-outdoor facility like they have in Simsbury. It seems that hockey is a growing sport in the area, and I would love to see, at least out there when you're looking at this, that there could be a possibility for an outdoor rink that we could utilize. I think that would be a great idea for not only bringing not only the Weathersfield hockey team to be able to practice and even have games there, but youth hockey as well to come in. So
It says but not limited to.
it does say
I
but
think it's
not
broad
limited
enough.
to. But I got to put a little plug in. And who knows how
We might
long?
need a developer to come in for that one, though.
Who knows how long I will be a hockey dad, but I am a hockey fan, and I would love at some point, well beyond my years of being on the council, to be able to watch high school hockey outdoor at a facility here for our Weathersfield team. So, I don't know.
No, I think you
Mr.
all covered it.
Town manager, thank you again for all your hard work on this. Is there a motion?
Kevin, you want to make the motion?
I can't even see it in here. It just says.
I had trouble finding it.
The action required says none on the.
Here.
It is,
No, I think we do this. We do the be it resolved and be it further resolved.
no, there is, if you're looking at your packet, there is a packet for, which says none, but that's for the public hearing
The
portion.
B2B.
Yep.
Here it's, yep.
I move that make a motion to approve the amended resolution to reserve ARPA funds for the development of a multi-purpose sports and recreation complex, sports fields and/or associated facilities to include but not limited to an indoor and outdoor complex with artificial turf, as well as natural fields capable of supporting football, soccer, field hockey, baseball, softball, lacrosse, and track, and other extracurricular programs, and to direct the town manager to research the possible opportunities for development of a multi-purpose sports and recreation complex, an additional sports field in town, and provide a report with recommendations by no later than February 15th, 2023.
Second.
Thank you, councilors. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Unfinished business. You guys had seen this as a draft before us at the last meeting. This is the explanatory text of what I just mentioned, the $278 million. I don't know if, Mr. Town Manager, you have any comments on this?
Yeah, just really quickly, the version that's in front of you all, you've been given another copy. There have been some adjustments that have been made based upon feedback we've received from some of you throughout the week, and also from bond counsel as they've been reviewing this as well. I will note that on some of the comments that were made, Deputy Mayor Mazzarella is not able to be here tonight, but he did make some comments with respect to the graphs 1 and 2 in terms of basically on the labeling, and he makes the comment, and I think it was made by a resident as well, that the existing debt service goes away and there's no new debt service that's represented. We can't represent any new debt service that we don't know what's coming. In all likelihood, you're going to see additional debt service on top of this. We just cannot, we are not allowed to estimate what that might be without any concrete knowledge of that. So we can't put that there, but what we can do is put a notation saying it can be expected that additional debt service will be added to this as the town moves forward, but we cannot project what that might look like because we just simply do not know. The other point on graph 2, he mentions that the graph should represent the project impact to the taxpayer of just this project that's going out for bond and not all debt service. That is in fact what this graph represents. It is only the debt service for that project, and we will also again make an annotation on that to make that more clear for folks to understand. And then it will also say that it's based upon the net of anticipated grants from the state. No, we cannot guarantee we're going to get those grants. However, there's a high degree of certainty based upon the past of all of the grants we've ever applied to from the state and all other communities. There's certain percentages that are used to provide those grants from the state. That's what we're basing it on. That could all go out the window tomorrow, but we have to base it on something, and this is the most likely outcome. So again, we will make that clear as part of this, that is what that is. I think those are the highlights of the things that we've changed here, but if there's any other comments that things that people want to see changed here, I'll take those now and we can make those adjustments.
Are we in the middle? Procedurally, and this has been presented to us, are we voting on this tonight in order to secure this language?
There's no requirement that the council approve this. Well, this is coming back to you all. What you approved in the resolutions previous was that you authorize essentially the town clerk to move forward and have this created and put out there. This is a back and forth between my office, the clerk's office, bond counsel, and you all to try to get the language where it needs to be. The key here is it has to remain factual and neutral. Okay, we can't lean one way or another. We just have to present the facts, and then it's up to the voters to decide whether or not they want to support it, or any of you individually can support it one way or another. But as a body and as an organization, we cannot show favoritism one way or the other. We have to just produce the facts. So that's why there's been a lot of back and forth with bond counsel especially, and this will also be sent to the state prior to printing to make sure that there's nothing that we may have missed in terms of showing favoritism one way or another. As an example, there's a website listed here which was another comment of the deputy mayor. And if you go to that website, it does have all that information, those reports that were presented as part of this background information. But from that website, you can also get to other things, meeting minutes and things like that, where there was definitely opinions represented. So what we're going to do is create a new website with only the factual information on it, so that people that go there will only land on the data and not any comments from individual Board of Ed members.
So it sounds like you're looking for just discussion and comment, but no formal vote.
Correct. If there's anything that you all would like to see beyond what's here, and again, factual, not factual and neutral in nature, that we may have missed, that's the kind of input we're looking for here. And then we can send out a final draft version to everyone prior to going to printing.
I have no comment on, and no further comment on.
Councilman Hill, did I see?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just Mr. Town Manager, just a quick question in regards to kind of the process here. Obviously, the last big referendum that we did for these type of facilities was the high school renovation. So looking at specifically the projected financial impact in the explanatory text, obviously these are two completely different projects, but can you just, what I'm trying to get at is this the same process and verbiage and all of that went through that project that we're now continuing through here, just so that there's consistency, that residents and voters can look at it and say, all right, this is the same process and the same type of feedback, or same type of financial statement, things like that, as they look at this.
In the terms of financial statements, yes, this process is the same. We go to our financial advisors and ask them to provide us with an estimated percentage for the interest. You'll note that from the last time you saw this, it actually went up by 1%, because that's what our financial advisors told us based upon the markets right now. They recommended, instead of the 3% we had before, that we went to 4%. In terms of the information in this versus the high school, it's very different in that the high school, there was already conceptual plans developed in budgets. It was a very specific project. It talked about what types of things would be in that high school. You don't have any of that for these projects because it hasn't been done for this yet. So the money that's being allocated here includes all of that design work. Some of that work had been done for the high school up front of the bond. So it does not have the level of specificity that you saw in the high school explanatory text as you do here. It's more generalized because that's what we have.
That's actually extremely helpful to know for us to kind of to communicate to residents as well. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else? As this is not, there's no motion to approve this tonight, I think it's a working document for us, and I don't think you're limited to just tonight for comments on this. I encourage everybody to talk with the town manager on some of your edits or tweaks to this. I do know that we are in a time crunch because, as the town clerk had mentioned earlier, we do have an election coming up. Printed materials need to be in the hands of the public. Absentee ballots will be going out, correct me if I'm wrong, October 8th? October 7th. So we would need to get information. Just a couple things that I want to mention, having looked at this. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager, because my question at first was existing debt service. Having not only lived in this town, but been on this council for a number of years, that does seem to fluctuate. There may be, a need for purchase of...
Absolutely will fluctuate. It's guaranteed. And that's why we'll put language in there to make that clear.
Right. As I look down below that graph, the average home assessed value in Weathersfield is at $175,160. Looking at the 2012 explanatory text for the high school's $75 million project, the average assessed value of a home back in 2012 was $187,000 in that 2012 explanatory text. I think maybe working with the finance department and maybe getting input from realtors or anybody from the public that may have the exact average assessed value of a home in Weathersfield.
Well, the average assessed value will be, the assessor's office actually
Okay.
has that hard data.
Okay.
So I'll verify with them what that number is based upon the last assessment.
Okay, verify that. Just a couple things on project goals. Here in the comments from the parent from Charles Wright, I think there should be a fifth bullet. This is on the second page under explanatory text, project goals, 4 bullets. Maybe we should mention something, because this plan does have the closing of Charles Wright in it. So I think that needs to be mentioned somewhere in here, that there would be, I mean, it does talk about the schools, and it has the photos. It even includes the photo of Charles Wright, and it does have the Phase 3, Charles Wright Elementary School will close at the conclusion of Phase 3. But I think the project, maybe it's not the project goals would be to consolidate 5 to 4.
Okay.
So somewhere in there that would be included. With the second paragraph on that same page in the middle, there is mention of and we've seen it all, this is the facilities report, where we are currently expected to pay $32 million over the next 10 years just to keep the schools going in their current state. I think I have some ideas on how to reword that, but I think it should be mentioned somewhere that it's not in excess of $32 million. I think the Collier's report had it at $31.7 million, and that included the modular, or the portables, if you will, at Charles Wright and at Highcrest. Both had already been completed, so that $32 million is less the amount that the town had put into renovating the modules. And then it also included in the Collier's report approximately $450,000 for a new boiler at Hanmer School that, again, we had paid for last year through ARPA funding. So I think we don't have to have that spelled out, but I don't think the 2018 numbers in excess of $32 million is accurate right now, in the sense that, some of that had been worked on. Moving over to impacted schools, coming off of what I just said, I think in the Highcrest Elementary School, it does say portables, both the Highcrest and I think Charles Wright mentions portables. In the, we would use what is actually written in the Collier's report, and I don't believe they use the word portables, but it's modular classrooms. And then I would say actually in there, that we did in fact through the town pay to do those. And that's kind of where I am with this. Obviously there are, this is fluid and it's a time constraint. So if there's anything else that any of the council members may have concerns with in this draft form, please get it to the town manager as soon as possible so that we can, in fact, get it over to the town clerk. And then finally, I think having a conversation with you and with bond counsel on this, it's typical that these go before the State Elections Enforcement Commission, just to make sure that you're not pushing one way or another way.
Correct.
That it's as neutral as possible. If there's a way we can get this in the hands of SEEC as soon as possible, with the caveat to them that this needs to be
further adjustments.
that there may be further, I guess after our adjustments, that this needs to be back in our hands as soon as possible. So.
Yes, I'm working with bond counsel. He has a contact there in the office that he'll be able to get it directly to as soon as we're ready.
Great. Just wanted to be, as, I don't want us to all of a sudden have the public vote for $278 million or vote against $278 million, and all of a sudden we have an explanatory text that is not misleading, but it is leading, so.
And I'll note too that we did reach out to bond counsel after talking with the superintendent today. The parents' organization wanted to create posters and hand out flyers during the parent-teacher, the open house it's going to be over the next couple days, Tuesday and Wednesday. Bond counsel said that they could not do that. They cannot put posters up in the schools or pass out flyers in the schools. What they do outside of the school building is another story, but that it kind of goes against what we're trying to do here, maintain that neutrality because it's in the public building. So if you hear that, that is why they were provided with that direction, and the superintendent's aware of that.
Okay. And then maybe, I'm just thinking of it now, all of us have gone through elections. Obviously, we wouldn't be up here right now except for Mrs. Carbone. But I know she's been involved in elections in the past. Do they need to form a PAC? Do they? I guess, you know, we always have to see approved by, and we hear it on the radio right now. This ad is approved by candidate X. Do they need to have a? And words escaping me right now. Yeah, well, it's a PAC, but a attribution to who paid for any posters or signs. Does that maybe in our question to SEEC that we ask, does there have to be a disclaimer, that's the word, on the bottom, or an attribution to who paid for it? Maybe those that were involved in the 2012 high school renovation would be able to answer that easier. But I'm just thinking right now that typically when we send out a mailer or a postcard or radio ad, you have to put attribution. It may not have to, because, but it's a question on a ballot, so I really don't know. Okay. Maybe we can get an answer for that as soon as possible. Those are my 2 cents on 278 million. Anybody else at all? Okay, and I don't believe there's a motion, that's just for discussion. Moving on the agenda, bids, there are none. And then other business, this is where we have item 5A, the Meadows access, and then the motion for the pool. So before us, it's just no, actually, pool is on new business, sorry. Resolution for introduction is the Meadows access ordinance. It's in our agenda. It's just simply for introduction today. We will hear a public hearing and vote on it at the next meeting. No action required there. New business, this is where we have now a third item. Item 6A, Economic Development Strategy Initiative. I see Joya, our Economic Development Officer, here in the audience. I believe she worked with you, Mr. Town Manager, on this.
She did, and she also worked with the EDIC.
EDIC and RDA.
Yeah, I would just want to say that I think EDIC and the RDA all worked very hard in pulling this together. Joya worked extremely hard putting this program together that you're going to see. I think it's a great step for us to really incentivize new businesses coming in, and also the expansion of some of our existing businesses in utilizing some of these funds to do, I think, what they're intended to do, and that's help the economy recover from the pandemic. So.
Good evening. I'm Joya Zach, Director of Economic Development for the Town of Wethersfield. This evening, I'm here on behalf of the Economic Development and Improvement Commission and the Redevelopment Agency to present the response to the Town Manager's request at the July Town Council meeting for a set-aside of $1,140,000 from ARPA funds for economic development and redevelopment initiatives. Proposals being presented are part of a strategic investment plan to incentivize transformative projects. After my presentation, I welcome your feedback and questions. The goal of the commissions through this plan is to strengthen overall economic development in Wethersfield by offering a complementary package of options to a broader range of businesses and developers, keeping the town attractive and competitive. By incentivizing transformative development projects and opportunities, we look to reduce the tax burden on the residential tax base by growing the commercial grand list. We have looked at programs and offerings in other towns and have drawn upon these ideas to create our plan. Today, the tools available that have had tangible results are the facade program, the tax incentive program, and some marketing efforts. To complement these offerings, our plan includes 3 parts, which I will summarize. Our first proposal, which you have a copy of, is a small business investment loan program designed as a public-private partnership financing tool to initiate or bridge financial gaps to enable business startup and growth. We envision a low-rate loan with a maximum term of 10 years, maximum loan amount of $300,000, and the loan amount will not exceed 50% of the overall project, with a portion of that debt being eligible to be forgiven if specific conditions are met. The second proposal you have is a business development and expansion grant. This is envisioned to incentivize and facilitate development and expansion that lead to transformative projects, job growth, and enhanced goods and services for the community. We look to offer a 50-50 match reimbursable grant that encourages public infrastructure improvements and innovations in its eligible improvements. The grant amount would be capped at $200,000 and only require repayment if certain terms and conditions of the agreement are not met. The third focus of the strategic investments is for enhanced marketing efforts. This will be used to not only market the suite of enhanced tools, but to strengthen the message that Wethersfield is business-friendly and looking to partner with developers and businesses. It will be used to promote the goods, services, amenities, and businesses the town has that make it an attractive place to live, work, and play. Marketing will include traditional printed materials and/or ads, and there will be a concentrated focus on improving and strengthening our online and web presence.
You want to advance? Yeah.
To make all this a reality and keep Wethersfield competitive, we also need to improve the way we do business. Ideas are to strengthen advisory services by having project advocate liaisons. They will partner with applicants to bring them through the process in a coordinated and, in some cases, a more efficient manner. We look to hold developer, broker, and business roundtable sessions to foster open, honest discussion and feedback. What works, what doesn't, and envision some dream goals. We want to establish a more proactive business outreach effort, and we want to make sure that all continue to feel welcome here, from large developers or national tenants to small business and property owners, including any that may continue to be more adversely impacted by economic factors resulted from the pandemic. Finally, our ask. We're looking to allocate $900,000 to fund the new grant and loan programs, $200,000 for the existing facade and tax incentive programs, and $40,000 for the enhanced marketing efforts. In addition, we would also like to recommend that in future budgets, 35% of new tax revenue generated by these programs be budgeted to the Economic Development Department for program continuation. Thank you, and I welcome your feedback and questions.
Any questions, comments for Joya?
No questions? I mean, I'll make a comment, but go ahead. I'll summarize at the end. No problem. Go ahead, Matt.
Joya, I see multiple concepts that we are presenting here.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those concepts appear to be ones that might generate tax revenue to the town specifically, and others may not be such a direct connection between the tax revenue that the town can, acquire is not the right word, but tax. So,
Councilman Forrest, can I just ask you to bring your microphone just a little bit closer?
So when we talk about giving businesses loans, are we talking about the people that build buildings in our town? Because we tax two items from businesses. One's the sort of the stuff that's inside of the buildings that might be personal tax, and then there's the building themselves. But a vast majority comes from the value of the property. And I see where the facade improvement program might add to the value of a property, although I'd be interested to see if there's actually a direct correlation or what the percentage correlation efficiency of that might be.
Okay.
But a lot of the other ones look more like SBA type stuff that is encouraging business growth, but that's not necessarily directly related to tax growth. So I'm wondering if you could sort of comment on the two, or perhaps create the nexus between the tax growth potential and the efficiency of the dollar being used to create tax growth. So for every dollar that we're going to loan out, how does that actually equal a taxable dollar or cents on the dollar that we can actually tax that we'll see revenue growth?
So for the small business loan, which is what you're referencing, not the grant, correct?
Well, there's a mix of two, right? It's part loan, part grant, depending if you match some of the criteria and.
Yeah, so the maximum on the $300,000 loan, and that would be paid back to us at a low interest rate. We're envisioning that to be that kind of gap financing. Let's say a restaurant wants to expand and they need to build a new kitchen in the process. It would be a faster way of them perhaps getting that money, expanding. They're going to stay in town. They may hire more employees. That's what we envision that loan to be, to bridge that kind of a gap.
So what would the efficiency be of that type of a representation to actually our taxable income? So if they took 300,000 and maybe it's, I don't know if it's a 50-50 match, but the value of that entire property might increase only a very, very small percent, or maybe even not at all with that increase.
Well, it may relate more to the personal property tax inside. It would be job growth, though. It could bring more people into town if they've expanded. I mean, I don't have a number to share with you at this point. We could look at it.
And that could be one of the things we look at for the criteria. I mean, it could be that we focus on those types of projects that instead of maybe fitting up a new kitchen, but they're actually adding an addition, which is adding value,
Sure.
which those types of things, and that could be one of the criteria that it has to, we could set a criteria that gets to your point of saying, you know, it needs to show increased value to the tax base as well.
I wasn't trying to make a point either. It was just sort of a conversation to understand the program.
Mm-hmm.
But it would seem that, especially with the last criteria part, which I think is a phenomenal idea, and we've been kicking around, the 35% of the increased tax revenue then sort of rolls back in, so you can sort of create the snowball
Correct.
effect. So you'd want to have projects or design a program that does exactly
Absolutely.
that, creates actual new growth in tax revenue, and not simply non-taxable. So, you know, if a company said, okay, well, now we're getting this loan and we can add in 7 new people, well, that's great for the state of Connecticut.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily help Weathersfield out in a very direct
No, I think
manner.
it's a great point, and it's something that we should include as part of the criteria, because that was the intent, that all the discussions were about expansions of businesses, creating new space, new taxable,
right,
space for us as a community. Otherwise, to your point, what's the value? But we can specify that better in the document.
If you think it's necessary, then great. Also, some of the loan programs, are there similar loan programs or that are also like with the SBA? When I was listening to sort of your criteria and as I was filling out, I sort of see the SBA as running the same type of, I'll say similar type of programs. So if they could get it from the SBA or from the town of Wethersfield, let me ask you, are there similar programs by this SBA, like these types of loans for these types of purposes for growth and expansion and stuff like that?
Right, so we looked at SBA loans, we looked at what DECD offers, and I also looked at the town of Manchester, which has a very similar loan program, and talked to that economic development director. And this just kind of bridges a gap that if the SBA only gets them so far and they have to go to traditional bank financing, we might be able to get them that help faster and move the project along. That is the intent. It's not to replace SBA or anything like that. We would
certainly not with these dollars.
No. It's just an alternative and a way of us showing how we believe in your business and we want to partner with you and keep you in town. You know, it's an expansion thing. It's not to just remodel your existing kitchen. It's we're going to expand and add and grow, or, you know, whatever business it is.
Right. On the facade program in particular, has there been any analysis as far as like tax growth for that particular program since we've had it for a while, which is
I can
why it
yeah,
shows it
there's
differently?
about average 25% return of investment on every dollar we spend, so, or put on a project, so.
So I just support this. We talked about this in the beginning, of course, but if you did add a criteria or consider the criteria as you guys move forward, that it's really, hopefully it's intended to increase our taxable base.
Yep.
And not necessarily for internal business growth, which is maybe great for that business, but then they just move.
Yep.
And that doesn't help us out at all. Thanks.
Councilman O'Connor.
Yeah, I would just, Matt, I completely agree with the questions here. I understand exactly where you're going with it, but I would say this is the 35% that they get back is an incentive to increase that tax base.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? So that to me is a pretty good part. That, like, I went through this last night and had a lot of questions, and when I got my arms around it, that's a great incentive, you know, because, and the fact that they'll be selective, it's not just anybody can come up and say they need this, is, to me, is, you know, this is light years from where we've ever been here in this town, so I thank you for doing this. I think it's great.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilor O'Connor and Councilor First. This is great, and the 35% is a big deal. I wanted to ask you about the process. Thank you for your work on this, and the town manager, excellent work. So, assuming that this passes and goes through, when would this be available, and how will this be marketed to business and property owners?
Yep, so we have, you know, not vetted this in terms of like, what financial partners will we go with to look at the, you know, tax returns and all the information. We haven't put the application together yet. This is very preliminary, so, I mean, I'm going to be optimistic and say, hopefully within 60 days of an approval that we know we can move forward, we could have something, but we do need to run it by all the people who need to be involved and get the applications together and make sure it's all vetted correctly.
So it's fair to say this could be a 2023 opportunity for our business?
I would think, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Pentelow.
Yeah, if nobody else has any questions, there's just, I worked with Joya pretty tightly on this as well as Fred, so I don't really have questions, more of comments. I do want to say thank you, Joya, and thank you for putting up with me, and, you know, as we kind of spearheaded this, and thank you, Fred, as well. I think what we really tried to focus in on, especially Joya tried to focus in on, is successful programs that have worked, and sort of, you know, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it works, it's like, why not just see if we can replicate it here in Wethersfield? I think both these do that. I think you've seen, especially the city of Hartford and what they've done with their grant programs and filling up Pratt Street, and now that's totally occupied. I think that this sort of matches and mirrors that with the development and expansion program. This was great. I can't express this enough. This was crafted with really going out and meeting with developers. I know Joya, as well as other members, including my own father, who's also serves on the RDA and the Economic Development, went out and solicited feedback from commercial property owners in town, prospective developers, and really went and asked them, hey, what would incentivize you guys to come to town? So I think this does all that. I think you knocked it out of the park, and I appreciate all your hard work, both you and Fred.
Sorry, Councilman Pentelow, I do have just one question. I don't know if you have this. The RDA, it's in existence. We have it here in town. They have a budget for this, if I'm not mistaken, already. Do we know what that amount is right now?
I do not believe we have a budget right now.
Okay.
At all.
And just being in on some of those calls, the conversation had been back and forth, and I think this serves if it doesn't have a balance, it serves an incredible purpose. Town manager and I had a conversation earlier today, and I talked to you before this. this was something that I don't believe anybody on this council, maybe Councilman Forrest, you may have been on the council, when the Northeast Utilities property was transferred over to the magnet school, the Clerk school. We were going to lose funding because we could have gone to developers on that. I think at that time, the council decided a $2 million amount in principal, and we would take the interest on that, would be roughly average the tax amount that we would have received from any private development on that property. It's a long shot, and it probably won't happen for years to come, but other council, we can't bind ourselves, or future councils, we can't bind future councils on what they can do with that money. But the conversations we had last night on the $900,000, if it ever gets to that amount, that pool, and I know you guys would want to spend, EDIC would want to spend that money, so I don't think it would ever get to that point. Could we look at a trigger amount that 10 years from now, there's a balance of $1 million in there that you guys hadn't spent, that a future council may need at that point to balance the budget? Could there be a trigger point? Because I believe that trigger for the Northeast Utilities property is a 7-member vote. I don't even think it's 2/3. I think 7 out of 9 council members have to agree to withdraw some of that $2 million. Could there be, in discussion, that there could be a trigger point if an amount exceeds a certain amount, that future councils can vote with a 7 to 9 or 7 of 9 to take money out of that account?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I would love to have that problem.
Yes, we all would.
I think everybody would.
I just don't want sitting on a pool of money that hasn't been spent, that all of a sudden we are faced with something at some point in the future.
I think at least from my standpoint, I agree. I would think the commissions would agree too. We are looking to keep this going and perpetual and turn it around constantly, not to let it just sit. So
the idea too is that the council will get a full report every year from Joya on the success of the programs, the revenue that's generated as a result of those programs, and then any balance that might be in an account from the percentages coming back. And then as part of the budget process, again, every council will have to decide, yeah, we're going to take 35% of that new revenue and put it towards this program. And at any time they can say, no, we're not going to do that. And because it's always going to be the council's discretion on where money goes, existing pots of money, even, you can say, and that $10 million in there, we're going to take and use for something else,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any further questions or comments on this?
Any motion?
Councilman Pentelow?
I'll make a motion to budget and appropriate $1,140,000 to the Economic Development Department budget to implement the Economic Development Strategic Initiatives Program in the following amounts: $900,000 to fund the New Business Development and Expansion Program and the Small Business Loan Program, $200,000 to fund the existing facade program and tax incentive program, and $40,000 to fund enhanced marketing efforts, and to recommend that 35% of all new tax revenue generated by these programs be budgeted to the Economic Development Department in future budgets for program continuation.
Second.
Further discussion?
Do we have to?
You have to amend that for what you were
Or
requesting?
can that be run to?
Again, I'm not sure that you need to put in extra controls because you have all the control. The town council is in control of the finances here, and that 35% has to be voted on every single year. So if it's accumulating,
Oh, you could say no.
you can just say no, and very likely would. If they don't need it, you're not going to give it to them.
Got it.
So that's something that you have to vote on as part of the budget process every year. I don't think you need additional controls, but it's up to you all to say.
If you're good with that, I'm good with it.
Okay. And I don't know, I think it may have been mentioned, I just want to reiterate then, that we had already voted on the 1.14 million in July. This is the ARPA funding that we gave to the town manager for discretion on economic development. Okay.
It's just appropriating it to this specific program.
That is great. No further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Mr. Town Manager, this item is before us. Thank you, Joya. Sorry about that.
Good job, Joy.
Yeah, so I just threw this in there. I asked the mayor and the deputy mayor if I could put this in. I also spoke to Ken about it as well. We've been through some pretty long meetings over the last several months here, and a lot of it is, you'll note that, Joya was here and Kathy's here. A lot of times, staff is waiting around for basic votes for bids and things like that generally you always approve without much fanfare. What is customary in my experience is that the council agenda would include a consent agenda, which is early on the agenda. And under that consent agenda could be items such as bids and those types of things, acceptance of grants, things that are considered non-controversial, and that will be determined in the pre-agenda meetings with the mayor, deputy mayor, and Ken in this case. And to say, if we can, let's put these on the consent agenda. And then you could vote for the entire consent agenda as one item. It's more common than not to have a consent agenda, and I think it just helps the meetings move quickly. Staff will be available for those items. If at any time during the presentation of the consent agenda, a council member wanted to pull any item on that to have further discussion, you can do it. You can pull it from the consent agenda, you'd vote on everything else, and then immediately following that vote, you would discuss that item that was pulled. And you can have a presentation, whatever level of detail. I just think this would help the meetings run a little smoother. We don't have to vote on it tonight. It's just something I want you to consider, just trying to move things along a little bit more efficiently, so.
Well, you don't like being here till 1 in the morning?
You
got a short commute now.
I will soon have a very short commute, but 1 in the morning. I don't think any good decisions get made after,
I would
11.
agree.
But.
Okay. Yeah, any questions or comments on that? Councilman Forrest?
Just some quick thoughts that the consent agenda item that happens to be in section C now, which maybe just be a placeholder, may want to move it right up to the front. I could certainly see acceptance of boards and resignations and appointments as being on the consent agenda. So that might be, if it's going to be a consent and you're going to move through it and you want to get people up here, put it we're way at the front. Heck, maybe a consent agenda even can go in front of council reports and comments and stuff. If it's just everything everyone agrees upon. Yeah. May want to think about moving it up. The second thing is related to the, just the rules on how the consent agenda works. Probably a decent structure that maybe the council can vote upon and agree upon. Yep. You talked about, because it is a consent agenda, right? The one person at any point says it, that probably should be written down, just.
No, I agree with that. That's why I'm just discussing it with you all, because I haven't discussed it with everybody yet, so I just want to throw it out there.
Just talking to you too. But yes, good idea, and those are just my two thoughts on the consent agenda, and it sounds like a pretty good idea.
I think it would have to go under council action, because we would be taking action, but it also gives councilors opportunity during council comments, maybe to bring up some of their comments that they just, not concerns, because it's on consent, but something that they may want to mention about an item coming up on the consent calendar that they wouldn't get a chance to discuss just because it is on consent. And then I mentioned this to the town manager. The legislature, they go through bills that aren't on consent, but all of a sudden they realize that there's really no dialogue, no debate or anything like that. So I don't know how we would do this. Typically, the consent calendar at the legislature is voted on at the end. So, just like tonight, we might not have any concerns about the smoke-free town facilities. We could bring that up. It might not be on consent at first. We might bring up some comments and say, move this item to consent. So it does change where that consent vote would be. Again, we can flesh it out through discussion, but that's one thing that the legislature does, is they discuss a couple bills that are pretty mundane and then all of a sudden move it to consent. So Hopefully, we can have all that worked out before the meeting, and we just simply say, hey, there's no reason to do it. Legislature also takes up, 50 bills in one day. We typically do them pretty quickly in voice votes, so there might not be a need for a consent calendar at the end, but just something to consider. So that was for introduction. Now to item 6C. This is the motion that I had made earlier to open the agenda. I think I discussed it with most folks up here, and I think Councilman Lesser had discussed it with his caucus. I can't say unbeknownst to us because I think it was mentioned, but we may have been caught up in the closure of the Willard Pool at the time by Parks and Rec, and actually not by Parks and Rec, but by the previous interim town manager. Thankfully, we were able to put funds in and keep Willard Pool open for the summer season. But included in that request to cut funding to Parks and Rec, there was a request, and it did get approved in the budget, to withhold $36,000, roughly $36,000, but to be exact, $36,382 to keep the high school pool open for the months of October to May. That money was not allocated in our budget that we voted on. Sitting through last meeting 2 weeks ago, when we did the year-end general fund balance transfers, we probably should have included some funding in there if folks would have agreed at that time to put some of the surplus that this council had, or our budget that we had adopted in 2021, that we had a budget surplus, rather than move it over into the general fund and then pay for some other items with it. We probably should have put the $36,000 in at that point. Hindsight being what it is, we can't use general fund revenue. So I would like to have a discussion on using $36,382 of ARPA funding that we have at our discretion right now to keep the pool open for Parks and Rec programs. I believe it's a couple days a week, including Saturday and Sunday, for the public to use the high school pool for those months of October through May. Any discussion on that? Councilman Forrest?
How did you get to the 36,000 number? I was thinking like lifeguards, even for that amount of time for a couple of days, just didn't seem to get there, but maybe there's another
Kathy Bagley?
calculation that I'm not sort of thinking of than paying like some lifeguards for some time.
Good evening. That is the budget number that was cut to pay for the lifeguards. Does that answer your question?
Maybe, but are we now on a shortened schedule because it's now October to May, but you didn't need it for the whole year? And
Well, the pool usually doesn't open until the second week in October. So that 36,000 is the regular schedule that we would normally have.
and it's 2 days a week?
It's, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have early morning swim and then evening swim. Wednesday and Friday, we have just evening swim. And then on Saturday, we're all afternoon is recreation swim.
So is the cost paying for lifeguards for all that time?
Yes.
Is that the driver?
That is the driver.
Thank you.
And I think councilmen and women on this council had heard from the public a couple comments and emails that have come in. I know I've received a couple, and actually I was a little taken aback when I first read it, and my apologies. I should have probably mentioned this during the budget negotiations, but again, we were talking about a number of things that we were either going to include in the budget that hadn't been included or take out of the budget at the time. And like I said, I think our focus at that point was the public that had come in and discussed the closure of Willard Pool, but this had escaped discussion at that point. So I think, having heard the budget transfers and that we were in a surplus, which is a good testament on this council that we'd worked pretty well to get to a surplus, that we should use that 36,000. Unfortunately, we can't use the surplus, but we can use ARPA funding for it, so. I'll make a motion that we use $36,382 of ARPA funding for the opening of the continual opening of the high school pool for Parks and Rec uses through the month. Is it through May or does it end May?
It goes through May.
Yep. October 15th or
We have to hire lifeguards now, so I don't want to commit to an actual date.
Yep.
But,
for the period that the pool is
Yes.
open from October through May. Good.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that is it for new business before us. Minutes, thank you to the town clerk's office, Deb Hammer in particular, for going through last meeting's minutes, and she did send a number of copies of those today to us. I trust everybody has had an opportunity to look through those fully, and if I'm not mistaken, everybody on this dais was present at that meeting. So,
Move approval.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
That'd be a good thing for the consent agenda.
Every once in a while, man.
Every once in a while, right? I think I'm up to 3 in this council meeting.
And then, moving on, item 8, public comment. This is the second portion. Yes, sir? Public comment?
Nick Roger again, from 25 Walcott Hill. I just wanted to comment on the economic development. I've worked with dozens of towns in a dozen or so states on those programs, and for the life of me, I'm shocked there's no clawback provision. That to me is, again, amazing. I don't see any measurement. A return on investment of 25 cents on the dollar. No wonder developers want it. If you give them $100, they'll have to give you 25 back. Every single program I've dealt with, there's been job retention, there's been investment in community, and there's been an ROI. I saw none of those things on that slide. I know there's been a lot of good work, and I appreciate it, and I get the idea of economic development. I saw nothing that protects the town in the case of default. If there's a loan made for $300,000, who's the guarantor of the loan? The town. Are we going to end up with real property? I heard personal property declarations. How many personal property declarations have increased in the past 5 years in this town? I looked, it didn't seem like the grand list moved that much. So I would posit and recommend and hope that there's something beyond what we saw on that slide that protects this town, because it looks like $1 million that we're going to get $200,000 back on. And payroll tax goes to the state and federal government. Comes back to Wethersfield indirectly, got it. Sales tax, again, our 1% local tax rate, or whatever, 0.35, or whatever Connecticut decided to do, I don't really see the benefit here. I see $1 million gone with no protections for this town. Other than, you got a business plan, we'll look at your tax returns. I look at tax returns all the time. I can't tell you if it's a good business or not without looking at audited financials. I'm going to go ahead and assume small businesses aren't going to have that. I saw absolutely no guarantee that this town will get $1 back from any of those invested monies. So my sincere hope is that there's some level of detail behind it that protects the town and its taxpayers from lending out money to developers who can give back $25 per 100.
Thank you. Points well taken. I think we will discuss it with EDIC and the town manager. I believe Councilman Pentelo could probably bring those concerns up to the EDIC.
Yep.
And get there. Mr. Young.
Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I take exception to the comments that Mr. O'Connor made regarding, he wasn't in favor of this resolution and putting in this building. I think if someone turned on I stayed here at the last meeting till after midnight. And around midnight, He shook his head and he demanded that we do a deal right away. And that was proof. Go watch it. I watched it. And the fact is, there's no way you could say you didn't care. Then all of a sudden, when you're looking at the resolution, it says create a multi-purpose sports and recreation complex that would allow youth programs to operate year-round. What does year-round mean? That's what it means. And that's what you did too, Mr. O'Connor, while you were sitting up here. You went like this, and I'm sitting out there, and I'm saying, holy mackerel, is that what it is? Yeah. And now you backtrack. This is a horrible thing. And let me tell you something, Mayor. This whole thing, this whole discussion that's going on here over the last 3 different meetings over the Keisha Farm, I guess it's even further back, it all started back in when they suspected that they were going to buy the farm. And what did they do? They went out and they prepared themselves and negotiated and quickly had a public hearing and moving on. And I came to this podium asking, where is the appraisal for the farm? They sent me the Keisha Farm family appraisal. That's what I was sent, as though I should now be satisfied with that, and I kept coming back. You all heard me talking about where it is, those who sat up on here on the council at that time. But in the end, Mayor, I did get the appraisals, and here they are. April 20th, 2018. That was long before your public hearing. You had this appraisal by Curran and Fazio, LLC from Fairfield, Connecticut. That was for the north side of Highland Street. You had another one that was dated April 20th, 2018, the same date, and that was for the south side of the Highland Street. And both of those were valued at around $1,720,000, not $2.4 million. And because of that, I dug my heels in. And I kept that, I didn't know. When did they send it to me, Mayor? They sent it to me, Gary Evans sent it to me on the referendum was on November 6, 2018. So the appraisals were there and ready to be handed out to the public, which they did not do. I got it on September 10th, 2019. That was 10 months after the referendum from Mr. Gary Evans. I have his email. I never deleted it. I saved his appraisals, and it was nothing but a crooked deal to make sure that the citizens did not see it. And all of you that sat there, I think there's 4 of you today, or 3 of you sitting up here today, that were part of that, and never once raised their hands to say, hey, wait a minute, there is an appraisal. Why don't we give it to them? Crooked and dishonest. You'll never get me to vote for a referendum in your town, okay? I know how bad it is. There is no credibility with my town council. But it took 10 months after the referendum to give it to me. And they gave me a kicker. I just mentioned two appraisals. They gave me a 3rd appraisal. The 3rd appraisal was dated April 9th, 2019. Your referendum was November 6, 2018. Yeah, raise your eyebrows, because crooked is crooked, dishonest is dishonest. And this council has demonstrated, that council back then has demonstrated what dishonesty is to the public. It's called withholding. Withhold information. Nobody would talk about it. So here we get to this point with this resolution. Last meeting, I sat here until after midnight. And that was probably, when the resolution came out, the statement that Mr. O'Connor and whoever put in, this property cannot be legally sold or subdivided for private development purposes per bond council. I had never heard, never seen a statement like that. Yet, I talked about how we could make some money. And this contradicts what I was saying all along, and not one of you stepped up. Not one stepped up to say, hey, wait a minute, we have a statement from our attorney, our bond attorney, and we want to share it with you. And now, last meeting, I asked for a copy of it. And what'd you do? You voted against me. You can't have it. Right, Mr. Manager? You didn't give it to me. I'm a citizen, I paid for whatever that is, and I should have it. Now, if you're hiding behind what they call attorney-client privilege on that, what else have you been hiding on? You sit up here and don't say a word during the meetings. Very little you say. Maybe you're all thinking that you're under attorney-client privilege and you shouldn't be speaking. But if this is the way our government works, it's got to stop, guys. We already bought a farm that was extremely pricey, and it was crooked. The citizens should have had a copy of that appraisal before the referendum, and that's what I kept asking for. Where is it? Where is it? And nobody talks about anything in this town on the council. They just keep it quiet. And here we are, we're sucking wind on a piece of property that is way overpriced. You're talking about putting a farmer on there. You know how hard farmers are to make money today? We're going to have to put him on welfare to get him there, and we're going to have to pay his electric bill and his gas bills and his tractor bills and every other thing because he can't make it. The
Mr.
big guys are closing down.
5 minutes are up.
Yeah, I know. But the fact is, you got it all screwed up, Mayor, and that's thanks to our prior council and the continuation of nobody wanting to talk. You guys got to start talking. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Any further comment? Hearing none. No executive session tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none. Motion carries.